Good evening, everyone. It is Tuesday, February 11th. We have a special meeting tonight of the City Council of Louisville, Colorado. Let's take a quick roll call just because people are on various meetings.
Mayor Lane,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Dickinson,
Here.
Councilmember Cooperman,
Here.
Councilmember Baby, here, Councilmember Hamilton, here, Councilmember Hefner,
Here.
Councilmember Kern.
Here.
Thanks. We have a light agenda tonight, but an important one. The first item is an item of consent. So I suppose what we need to do is first approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. That I'll take a moment of privilege to say that we really look forward to your joining us, Diana. Our new, soon to be city manager is on Zoom tonight, and really appreciate her tuning in and just approved her contract. So thank you to everybody who was involved in the contracting process. Regular agenda is one presentation by staff concerning traffic calming. So that presentation.
Sure, I'll do a little intro here. We're gonna do something a little different today. Usually you are used to me presenting, but I thought I'd bring people that are way smarter than I am and actually put a lot more time into this than I do because I'm bouncing around on a lot of topics. But I want to introduce Jordan Jeffries. He's our assistant city engineer. He's been with us just about 3 months, started early November. He's walking in with a good satisfaction survey, and I hope after tonight he's going to walk out with a good satisfaction survey. So let's keep that streak going. And then Jeff Nettleton's been with us since 2019, October 2019. He works on all your traffic calming, a lot of your future 42, your South Street underpasses. He's our transportation guy. They both they bring us a lot of experience, and I want to emphasize as they do the presentation today that we take a lot of care with traffic calming and the thought that we put into it. And when we make recommendations to the city council, we're making those recommendations off of data, our experiences or solutions that may exist in Louisville or in other cities. We are never experimenting with people's lives in Louisville. We are introducing concepts that are proven and that we believe in based off metrics and trends and data. And so as these guys are presenting tonight various things, that's what a lot of our recommendations and thoughts are based off of. Now, as we all know, there's also a community that we need to keep in mind. That community, some people want more traffic calming, some people want less, and that can ebb and flow depending on where people live or who lives here and coming and going in city council. And so we try to keep up with that ebb and flow. Ultimately, we want to create the character that the community wants and that the council gives us guidance on. And so it's important to keep in mind, I did a highs and lows question with a lot of my staff of what was your high last year and what was your low? And for a couple of my engineering staff, low last year was just the Via Appy experience, the whole experience and how that worked out. And I don't think, you don't want to go into that in depth, but I want to address it and say that I think everyone always goes in with good intentions and we always try to spend money wisely and do the best we can. And no matter how much engagement we do, it may not be enough. No matter how much money we spend, it may not be enough to keep someone from making bad decisions. And so just keep all that in mind as we're presenting. And ultimately, we want to get things right. And there is weight and there is consequences to our decisions. And I just want to kind of keep that in mind and address all that before we jump into it. So Thanks for the time today, and we're looking forward to seeing what you all think. Jeff, take it.
Thanks for that introduction, Kurt. Again, Jeff Nettleton, a civil engineer 3 here in Louisville. I'm gonna try to get my screen shared here. All right, it looks like we are shared and up and running. Okay, again, so Jeff Nettleton, tonight we're gonna be here to present and discuss some information on traffic calming and traffic safety throughout the city of Louisville, and touch base on a few things that we've done here in the past several years, at least during my time and even some time before this. Just want everyone to be aware and know, kind of like echo what Kurt said, we're committed to eliminating serious injuries, accidents, fatalities. And over the next several slides, we'll kind of see what that vision might look like. So 0 is our goal, and a safe system is how we'll get there.
Before we get too far into it, I want to do a quick sound check because we've had complaints in the past that we, council, haven't been able to be heard by people online. Since we've got one of the guinea pigs, including 2 of our council members. Could you, one or both of you, let us know if you can hear us, and particularly the speaker?
I can hear you all just fine.
So I can hear Jeff, but it's hard to hear you, Chris.
Okay,
You break in and out.
all right, thanks.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks, Ed, Chris. All right, so what are we here, to discuss? So tonight we'll go over a couple of different topics. We'll start with kind of enlightening y'all what we get, community concerns, education, some terms to discuss traffic laws, terminology, perspectives, understanding of what the safe system approach is. We'll get into some of the recent improvements that we've been making, raised crosswalks, bulk dahlia and via Appia improvements. We'll discuss the expectations of the community, you all, and what does the future and our path look forward. And again, we're striving towards Vision 0, and we're going to do that through that safe system approach. The bottom of the slide include a summary of what we'll capture here, and that's to improve safety in Louisville through a comprehensive traffic strategy. First thing we'll touch upon here, which is where the root of it all is community concern, the community comfort. We hear from a variety of folks. Anything can be from speeding to distracted driving, safety of the children, other vulnerable users, safety of bikes, e-bikes, scooters. We see and observe and get complaints of vehicles disobeying stop signs, yield signs, traffic signals, and pedestrians and cyclists that aren't doing what they're supposed to do in the roadway when crossing and making sure that it's safe to cross. Cover a little bit of the terminology here that you'll see throughout the slide. So all ages and abilities, we go from 8 years old, which is about the beginning of independent bike riding and walking here in town, up to 80 plus year olds. When we discuss the 85th percentile, that's the speed at which or below 85% of drivers are traveling. It's a metric that we tend to use for gauging. It's an industry standard throughout, and it's a gauge for vehicular behavior and observation of traffic laws. Yes, sir.
Is that the middle or is 15% above?
So 85th and below will be what we look
So
at.
15% are
Are
covered.
going to be access.
Just want to know where the curve was.
Yeah, thanks. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the ADT, the average daily traffic, which is the amount of traffic on the street each day. FHWA is Federal Highway Administration. They provide a lot of the public funding that we see, federal dollars. They administer that, but they also administer and keep track of and make recommendations that we'll touch base on a little bit later, countermeasures, traffic calming, traffic safety, and try to set a standard nationally. And then the TMP, it's our Transportation Master Plan adopted back in 2019. So this is a slide that you guys have, I believe, seen before, touches base on Colorado traffic laws, two very important bullets here. I'm not gonna read it word for word, I'll leave it up on the screen, but in summary, the first one, the expectation is that drivers stop, wait at crosswalks when there's a pedestrian present showing intent. And then that second bullet there is that pedestrians and bicycles shall be prepared to stop at all crossings. One thing we can note in that first one is that drivers stop and wait at crosswalks. Very important, and then we'll get into some educational pieces later and how that's an important light, but crosswalks, Colorado law recognizes that crosswalks exist at intersections, and they don't need to be marked. If you're in an intersection, you're making your way across the street, that is a crosswalk. And then per the Colorado Department of Transportation, every pedestrian crossing the roadway at any point, other than within a marked crosswalk or within an unmarked intersection, shall yield the right of way to all vehicles upon entering a road. An example of that would be in downtown, where we see a lot of people coming out of a business, they park on the other side of the car, or on the other side of Main Street maybe, and they don't want to go to the crosswalk. As long as they're yielding the right of way to the cars, that's basically saying it's okay. The next slide here we're going to touch on is what FHWA is now moving forward with. It's a safe system approach. It's about being proactive. The aim is to eliminate traffic fatalities and serious injuries. Objectives from this are safer people, safer roads, safer speeds, safer vehicles, and post-crash care. Some of the guiding principles being serious death and serious injuries are unacceptable. That's the primary goal. It recognizes that humans make mistakes and they're vulnerable, that the responsibility is shared among all users. Safety is proactive. We try to be proactive. We try to get some engagement from the community of what is happening and try to get ahead of it. And then redundancy. Redundancy is crucial. And we talk about that a little bit more on the slide. That's everything from traffic calming improvements, enforcement, education, and multiple ways to go about doing that. So this slide here captures, hopefully it shows up pretty well. I can try to zoom in if needed. Traffic calming, it exists here in Louisville, pretty in depth. We've spent a lot of money through council support and funding over the past several years. We've implemented a wide variety of improvements throughout the city. These red dots here are bulb outs. So those are the crossings that are installed at some of the major trail crossings throughout town. Here on the Power Line Trail, you see a couple. We've got, if you look over into the downtown corridor, some of those bump outs in the corners and shorten that pedestrian crossing, allow that pedestrian to get out in front of the parked cars and see some visibility. We've got hawk signals. We've got one up over here that's our most recent in Eisenhower. And then we've also got the one over here at Blue something road over here on South Boulder Road. And I'll note that we also have quite a bit of RRFBs. You see 4 of them here on Via Appia. We've also got the one down here on Cherry. RFBs and Cox, while operate similar, they're different. We've got some new speed cushions up on Washington Ave that were installed 4 years ago, back in 2021. And then we've got the new improvements here on Polk Dahlia, including the green here we are showing, which is our raised crosswalks. That's over here on County Road. Got also Centennial, the 2 up on Heckler that we installed this past year. Next, we'll touch on some proven safety countermeasures. So this is FHWA. In this slide, you can click the link. We could share that link if you guys want. You can also Google it. And there's 28 of them currently that are a variety of ways to improve safety on the streets. These are examples of some that exist here in Louisville. So we've got RFBs, the Hawks, again, the raised crosswalks. These median refuge islands allow people to make a decision point in one direction, get to a safe place, and then make a decision point again the other way. One thing to note, just on the Hawks and the RFBs, is we do not recommend that they get mixed on the same corridor. Yes, Chris, go ahead.
Can you just, for the sake of everybody? Our acronym or something.
It is, thank you for that. Yeah, so an RRFB is a rectangular rapid flashing beacon. So those are the ones that when you press that button to cross, it gives you a blink. And what that is intended to do is alert drivers that your intent is to cross the street. While a driver is not required to stop until you've entered the crosswalk, it is ideal, it is the expectation of the community. And the difference between that and a hawk signal is a hawk signal operate a little bit more like an actual traffic signal. It goes dark, and then you push the button, it'll go to yellow, then it'll go to red, it goes to its flashing sequence, and that's okay. Just like a traffic signal, it's flashing, it's a stop sign, you get deads. Does that help? Let's see. So next up, we've got some focus areas. So these are areas that we take into consideration to a variety of topics. So when we get those community concerns, we get a traffic calming petition. These are some of the pieces and elements that we're going to look at in evaluating the corridor or the need maybe for some improvements. So again, speed management's priority, reducing vehicle speeds significantly decrease crash severity, improve pedestrian safety. Part of that is speed, obeying of the speed limits of the traffic laws. And what we can do with an engineering aspect is try to kind of force that a little bit, and there's some elements that we can do. And we've got pedestrian and bicycle safety to make sure that there's safe crossing options. Bike lanes, buffered bike lanes, protected bike lanes, and then the visibility for the vulnerable road users. So we also have to keep in mind we have those young cyclists, those new kids using whether it's e-bikes, their own bikes, seeking their own little bit of independence in the world, and so we've got to make sure those. And then we also have disabled users, vision, wheelchair, vision. So multiple users that we're trying to design our roads for, and sometimes those are competing interests. Another topic is intersection safety, improving the signal visibility from both a standpoint of traffic coming through at night. You get those little reflective visors that are starting to come in, those help. The LEDs, the brightness of the actual signal itself. And then of course the countdown timers and all the other pieces that work for a variety of disabled users or able-bodied people when it's safe to cross. Another important piece that we look at are we call it 3 E's, it's like a three-legged stool. And that's the education, enforcement, and engineering. For the education, we all go get our driver's license test. We all need to know how to operate a vehicle. We all have to make sure we're making good decisions behind the wheel, following the traffic laws, understanding stop signs and how to proceed when there is no stop sign in the local street, and how to yield right of way. Getting that information, that education, again, we have new independent users every year coming up and growing up through our school systems. And we take for granted sometimes that they just were born knowing how to operate in the street, and they don't. I've got a 12-year-old, 2 8-year-olds. I live this world and they still don't understand. I drive that home. So their brains are developing. We have to work with that. The enforcement, right? People make decisions, humans make decisions. We've all probably made a choice at some point to drive over the speed limit. I've lived that, I don't love it, it happens. Sometimes not even on purpose. Sometimes you're just driving along, lost in a train of thought, listening to whatever it is. You look up and you're comfortably driving and it's 30 and you're going forward. So you just try to make sure that the enforcement is there to make sure the community respects the rules that exist. Then, of course, the engineering. We implement infrastructure. That's what our group is here to do. We take those complaints. We see if there's some additional pieces to the first 2 E's that we can better implement. That's what you saw a few slides back. One thing I'll mention is in a context of streets as well, we have arterials, we have collectors, we have local streets. The local streets have a little bit different feel. We have children out there on low volumes, cul-de-sacs, where you might be out there learning riding bike, you might be out there shooting hoops, you might be out there using, playing hockey, street hockey, playing catch. Streets aren't really a playground, but look, we recognize this. I grew up, we all have probably participated, and it's great to live in a cul-de-sac, have that community feel. There's a little bit of inherent danger. We don't, again, going back to education, make sure people are aware when you're driving down the street that there are other users out there. Touched a little bit on intersection safety, hit on it a few moments ago, but the visibility of the traffic signals is important. The ability for blind, disabled users to cross, those audible push buttons are very, very helpful. Make sure we see right-of-way compliance, and right-of-way meaning you come to an intersection, your turn to go or someone else's. We see that sometimes competing interests at four-way stops where it's not always unknown whose turn is it whose turn is it to go, or you come up to those local streets where stop signs aren't required or needed, and you have to make your decisions on traffic law. But I'll note here, here in the middle, little time just to kind of brag. So this is one of our staff here in engineering, Michael O'Keefe. We did some through a local mobility company reached out. We have a blind user in town and wanted to see some improvements out at South Street with the audible push buttons. Alerted us to one of the push buttons was not functional. And we were able to go out and experience, put a blindfold on, put that cane in our hands. And if y'all have never done that, I would highly recommend it. It's enlightening, scary as heck. I mean, that's Highway 42 right there at South Street. And we went across both directions. We experienced people honking. So right here at this crosswalk, our traffic signal maintenance company, their project manager also came out and joined us, and he was doing exactly what Michael was doing and struggled really vitally to get across accurately. Car right here was laying in the horn and yelling some pretty nasty things. So we got to experience the hostility while we were out there doing this. And I got across halfway, just and that countdown timer is at 0, and she's in my ear. She's like, "You're halfway." Okay, she kept the pace, and let's go.
Do we have a policy about the audible crossing signals? Do we replace something? Do we automatically put it in now or anything like
So new ProAg guidelines, they just got adopted back in I want to say last July. And they do have some levels of requirements that when maintenance or rehabilitation to a signal that it is required. There are some new ADA guidelines as well in there. They talk about having the push buttons separated by 10 feet so that they can actually articulate which sidewalk is making those calls. We are looking more into what that research looks like. We actually do a pretty good job here in town with majority of those signals. We've got auto push buttons at South Boulder Road, Highway 42, got a match at South Street, or sorry, Short Street. Got a couple over on the castle. Got a blind user over there as well. Of course, those audible push buttons, they do automatically elevate volume. You have homes right behind that can get a little bit triggers it again, those competing interests, right? So yeah, we try to make sure, and if we get a complaint, we try to prioritize some funding to make some upgrades. As we get new ones in, if they're broken, we can try to prioritize if possible. So some additional considerations that we take here within Louisville as we get these applications. Volume, how much traffic does that particular road see? Posted speed limit versus the 85th. So again, if we're posted 30, we're seeing the 85th percentile, majority of those cars driving that 38, we've got probably some speeding issues out there. So then we look at enforcement, we look at some additional improvements from an engineering perspective. We look at schools, regional trails, vulnerable users, other factors.
ADT, average daily trips.
Average daily trip. So vehicle trip too. And then another competing interest, police and fire delay response times. What do those look like if we make some improvements? Do we create problems there? Accident history, have patterns. What are the causes of back to us. Context of the road use is residential, commercial, industrial. And then again, we'll touch on a little bit when we get to Polk Valley, residential on-street parking. We do, it's very important to our residents out there. And then of course, the last piece that we like to consider is community. What's the comfort level? What's the feel within that little micro community? So to touch upon a couple of basic traffic calming pieces that we've got upcoming for this year, some planned work that, with all your input and approval. So these are a couple of different pieces up here. So we've got the raised crosswalk here in the blue. This is a pretty important, we have a lot of calls coming through here that there's a little bit, people just don't yield to children wanting to get down to elementary school. So this project here is planned. If a couple weeks from now, you'll be awarding some resurfacing and concrete projects coming up when we open those bids. And if alternate 2 gets approved, we recommend that we include a raised speed table here, which is those raised crosswalks that we've talked about. And then we've got a pretty heavy, like 50+ signatures for some traffic calming on Madison Ave. We recently installed bike lanes and took away some on-street parking there. And residents have complained that helps to, or has created some visibility and some speeding issues and cut through traffic maybe related to Polk Valley. And we do see a little bit of a speeding. So we're recommending raised crosswalk here at Juniper, as well as some speed tables down at the other crossing. There's a lot of parks and people that do cross Madison. And then the fourth location that we potentially recommend this year is the Coal Creek Trail at St. Andrews. There's a pretty good amount of a lot of traffic, a lot of foot traffic, a lot of bike traffic that does come across this road, just to bring, again, higher visibility to the neighborhood there. These orange ones are all some other, yes.
Which direction are we looking down, Madison?
This direction is looking south. From that point down.
That's what I thought.
And so the orange ones are some other potential locations that we work to prioritize. A lot of that is like major trail crossings. A majority of those are major trail crossings and some minor trail crossing locations. We do have one other one that's, a couple other locations I could use for an example. It's not highlighted here. Griffith Street coming in off of Highway 42, the in-ground sign that left is the left coming out of Cannon. Keeps getting clipped, keeps getting broken down. So another intersection like that, it's coming off of a major highway into a school zone. Maybe another opportunity for us to put in a raised crosswalk. One thing to note here is how these, what the plan is to pay for these. We got the traffic calming budget this year in the CIP sheet. I think that's got a budget of about $50,000. So those are where some of the ones here in the cyan teal color would be, and then the orange ones are future, depending on what that funding is.
We can move forward. There's a question that came up today about how do we decide where speed bumps go, or how does this happen and when is it talked about? Well, when it's talked about is like meetings like this, study sessions with city council. Also along those lines, it's talked about when someone inquires to the staff about how to go about requesting changes, and then they can do a petition within their neighborhood, and if there's enough uptake, then we'll take a look at that. Parallel to that, we're also always looking for cost-effective solutions that to increase the comfort of the network. So the raised asphalt crosswalk on Polk Dahlia was the first time we had used that in Louisville. Typically in Colorado, you do concrete ones. When I was out in Maui, SCC Maui, they had a lot of these raised crosswalks of asphalt out there, and I really thought that was a good idea that we could utilize back here, and so we tried that out. It's been very well received. So in a case like that, now we're starting to plan ahead for many of our major crosswalks to have something that's cost effective in our versus something really expensive. So it kind of varies between being requested and petitioned to us being proactive, but we do try to stay consistent through the petition process or stick to enhancements that are identified like in our transportation master plan or school zones.
So I have a question on the speed bumps, the ones on Washington, we've been getting a lot of complaints that they're too high. And I know you've said that they're within the recommended height, but they seem to be lower or higher than the ones on Oakdale.
I mean, these are all established to a certain height. The standard has the same height for both types. One's slightly shorter than the other, but the height of them all are the same. They're all 3.5 inches. And I went out with a ruler, with a council member and an upset resident right after we installed the ones on Washington, and we measured every single side of every single speed bump and sat there and observed cars go by for quite a while. So I have high confidence through my own eyes and the eyes of the council member that for previous, that those are installed. Yes.
And what I can add to that as well is that we're always looking to make improvements. So that was the very first round up there. But those are too standard. They're just like Kurt said, a little bit shorter and versus that little bit of length. So it creates a little bit of a different feel. But I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with either one.
Okay.
So
But can we extend them then?
We could
People
consider
happy?
extending them for a cost. Our experience is we've had very few complaints, and those complaints have come from people that have expressed their concerns more than one time. We don't feel like we've heard a broad concern, and it probably would be 20,000 to replace those, 30,000.
I'd say that's probably a good order of magnitude. So you'd have to replace them, cut them out, you gotta grind out. Or
So
Actually, if I can jump in too, I'm so sorry. As Councilmember Fahey was mentioning, we're actually getting a lot more complaints in the last year or so. I apologize for my voice. We have been hearing an uptick in complaints, Kurt, on the ones on Washington, that they're not calming, they're, destroying people's cars in some ways because they're a really short speed bump at the height versus like those ones that you guys are putting in Polk Dahlia for the crosswalks where they're longer so a car can ride up on them and then over. And it's apparently, it'll slow everybody down without being as disruptive to the driver. And they're also oddly placed on Washington. They're not straight across. So if that's something we consider, because I think part of that was that there is a trail crossing there as well to be consistent with maybe the other trail crossings that you're looking at doing.
yeah, a couple of things packed in there. So, the answer is yes, we could switch those out if that's an expense the city council wants to undertake, and there's been enough concern for that to do that expense. So we are open to guidance. We would say we would not spend that money, but the council guide us to, we can make the change. The crosswalk, there's a concrete median there and a crosswalk. And so to follow up on that, are you conveying that the Coyote Run crosswalk that we should explore looking at a raised asphalt crossing there?
Yeah, instead of the way that the speed bumps are now, where they're kind of striated and separated to slow people down, I think through there.
Yeah, this is I think Coyote Run is an example of where everything has an equal opposite reaction when you do something. So we had quite a bit of outreach up and down that block, a lot of parents with kids walking to school, and we arrived at that solution with a lot of input. And we understand we're hearing that there's opposite input. We think the solution we put in is good. We're not trying to say it's popular, but it met the goals of the people that wanted to feel safe and comfortable.
I guess what we're hearing a lot of, what Deb and I are hearing a lot, is that maybe there is a better solution that still provides for calming and is not as difficult to use. So if we can be looking at that, and probably worth some expense given the number of people. I think the reason you're seeing a need for some raised crosswalks along Willow and Linden is because there's a lot of people now who are finding alternate ways around Washington because of those speed bumps. And not that they don't want to slow down, almost takes them longer, but they're really difficult to drive over.
Yeah. Councilman.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that to add to the conversation. You know, I don't think the design on Polk Dahlia is necessarily the panacea to the folks that you're hearing complaints from. I get the same complaints that Polk Dahlia is extremely aggressive, people's cars are damaged. I've gotten complaints that people have thrown their back out from driving over them. Which, and I don't want to accuse anyone of hyperbole, I drive over them every day. And they're pretty mild. And so I am personally, and I know, you know, I don't want to suggest anybody stretching the truth, but I'm inclined towards Kurt's view that, you know, they're designed to spec. And if you slow down, you know, 3.5 inches should be doable in most cars. I think unless you're in some sort of extreme low rider. And I've been over the Washington Street ones as well. You know, that's just my 2 cents from I've heard the same complaints and they're just not backed up by my own experience and I agree with them. That's our
I
same.
actually drive a sedan, and as Chris will attest, it is not quite a low rider, but it's bad.
Councilmember Kern, can
Yeah.
you use the raised hand? Because
Sure.
there are others waiting to speak. Yes, Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, in all due respect, speed bumps suck. When you're driving a car, would you agree? Because you want a nice flat road and speed bumps are the worst. I hate a speed bump when I'm driving a car. It makes me slow down. If I don't slow down, it makes my whole car shake and my groceries in the back shake. Speed bumps suck. And so that's the idea. Right? And so I think there are maybe some speed bumps that are better, worse, more expensive than others. There's some speed bumps that allow for, like, as I understand, fire trucks to go through without having to deal with them, which I think is what the design in Washington, right? And so, you know, it's hard, right? Because it's I mean, you guys are talking about this conflicting interest, right? Like, and my favorite, I've said this quote several times, and my buddy lives on Hickory, which comes up to Washington, like, oh, what do you think about the new speed bumps? This is 3-4 years ago. He's like, well, when I'm trying to pull out of Hickory, I love them. But when I'm driving on Washington, they suck. Like, yeah, right. So that's the thing, right? Is like, we're not trying to design a road that's nice to drive on when you're adding a raised crossing or a speed bump or any sort of traffic calming, you're making the driving worse, right? And so I think what we're trying, you know, like, is there, you know, are there speed bumps generally that are better than others that aren't as hard on a vehicle? Because there are speed bumps I pulled up to, and like, that was a curb. I just drove over a small curb. And no matter what speed I was going, my car basically hit that. And that's really uncomfortable. There are other ones that are, you know, seem to be nicer or are kinder to you when you slow down. And there's some, even when you slow down, it's like, bam, like, man, they put a parking curb out there. And so I think what I'm hearing, there are different versions that can, while being annoying, not be quite as hard on the experience of the driver if they're cooperating. But I think, as Dietrich's saying, like, anyone who's not cooperating and not slowing down, that doesn't work. But I think that education piece, so that was all about engineering. But I think the education piece of, there are people that believe I should be able to drive the speed limit while I go over a speed bump and not have a negative effect. And I think that's an education piece, right? Is that, no, actually it's designed to be cooperative with your vehicle below the speed limit, which I think is frustrating for people. It's like, oh, hold on, the speed limit is 25, I'm driving 24, and I feel like I just drove over a curb. That's not fair. It's like, actually, in order to get over this speed bump in a comfortable manner, you need to be going below the posted speed limit, which is frustrating. That I actually have to go slower than the speed limit to get over the speed bump. But I feel like that's because I've heard that from a lot of people, this righteousness of, I was driving 25 and it was, I threw my back out driving over that thing at the speed limit. Oh, yeah, you shouldn't be going 25 when you go over that. And I don't know that that's common knowledge. So I think that's, if there's signage or other education that can help people understand that these moments on the road are not designed for the posted speed limit. But we hope you stay generally under the speed limit or at the speed limit because of these things. And this is coming like rumble strips. I've probably, my life has been saved by a rumble strip on a rural road because you're just tuned up. What? Oh, there's a stop sign coming. first one in an hour, there's a stop sign, and I wasn't really thinking about stop signs. And so that rumble strip is really annoying when you drive it every day. But it's meant for something, right? So, you know, I think that I appreciate the work you guys are doing, and I just kind of wanted to get that out there that these are annoying. They're annoying for drivers. And I wanted to get one comment out. I have to run and I'll be back, but the raised crosswalk on Front Street as you come off of Highway 42 and or 95th, I guess, at that point, and you come down into downtown, that it's got to be a year old, less than a year old. That has slowed me down so much on that road. And I don't want to be a speeder, but it is like hard for me to come from the highway to a downhill and into town and not be going 35, 40 miles an hour. It's just difficult. And since that has arrived, it slows me down. I go over it, and now, well, I'm going 20 miles an hour. So it's really easy to stay at 25 as I drive in. It has absolutely changed the way I drive on Front Street from Cherry to Elm, right? And so that is an example of just amazing engineering that is making our roads safer. And so and again, some of my think that's really not, but like, I think that is maybe my favorite speed bump or race crossing that I've experienced as a driver. Like, it has made an actual impact on my life in the way I drive on that road, because I've always felt like this is an impossible speed. All those things coming into one moment. I apologize, I have to run for like a half hour. I will come back if the meeting's still going. I'll rejoin. But I have a personal thing I have to attend to, so thank you guys for your presentation. Apologize for my departure and interruption.
Thanks, Pepperton. Mayor Kern. Oh, I think she was just demoted, actually.
That was awesome.
I'm sorry about that, Council.
Thank you so much. No need to apologize for that one, Chris. I just want to so the comments that Caleb was just making are spot on as far as I think we can have raised bumps or raised crosswalks that provide for the efficacy, but are not nearly as jarring. And I agree with his comment that it feels like you hit a curb sometimes. Some of them are really difficult. And for a person who actually drives a sedan and not an SUV, for somebody who isn't young and does have arthritis, so really severe bumps and stuff affect me. I can tell you that you can slow down to 5 miles an hour over different kinds of speed bumps, and your car will react differently. And you'll still approach and drive slow. It doesn't have to be so significantly jarring on the car. If we can look at the engineering behind maybe the raised crosswalks, and I think a lot of the ones that extend longer and allow for a car to drive up with both tires, not one tire at a time, which is on Washington, but with both tires and then back down, it does allow for cars that don't have that kind of clearance or a truck suspension or whatever to be able to drive them still slow, but more comfortably. And I think maybe we can find some kind of engineering compromise with getting people to slow down without being so disruptive, as Caleb was mentioning really well. Thank you.
I just wanted to add what Judy and Caleb both were saying was that if you could just design the speed bumps to be a little bit gentler. The ones on Washington just seem to be more abrupt than the ones on Oakdale. So just when you're putting in new ones, make them the gentler ones.
So we are in a special meeting. You guys can give us direction. I think that's something that you guys should give us direction on, like it's some sort of. I think I'm hearing redesign that area or to provide some options in that area for some considerations on the input we received, and that's gonna have a cost. Bring that cost back.
Just a question to inform that thought. I mean, what is the schedule for? I assume Washington isn't really scheduled for repaving that soon.
No, this will be, we'll have to go in and grind those down.
Yeah.
And then reform some areas, or if we do a raised crosswalk, build that area up. So it's not part of a paving schedule. This would be a special project in that area to modify things.
But I mean, how long would we have to wait if we just wanted to do it as part of the schedule?
As part of which schedule,
The usual replacement.
Oh,
schedule for Washington.
Yeah, 10+ years, 15 years, but we have no plans to go back in there anytime soon.
I have a question. One question, comment. How much, if you haven't put anything in, what is the cost to raise crosswalk the 2 lane?
So currently, we've had over the last couple of years, we've installed a little different variety of pricing that we've got. Our estimates right now are about $15,000 to $20,000 per raised crosswalk. The speed cushions and speed bumps are a little bit less. It's not as wide, not as deep, so it's a little bit different asphalt out. So 8,000 to 15,000. We do open bids tomorrow, and within that contract, in those bids, we're going to get some fresh numbers, real numbers for this paving season.
I mean, I've been either on council or mayor for 11 years, so I have heard my share of complaints, both in the ward that I used to represent and in the city that I now say. I know that there's probably no place where people complain more loudly. I'm not going to say necessarily in greatest numbers, but more loudly than Washington. I don't necessarily equate loud to correct. I think there's, as you have pointed out, a lot of different considerations about it. I'm not going to say it might not be worth experimenting. It might be, or doing something different. But how much, and I think you may have mentioned this, but how much does it cost to like literally dig out or whatever you do to a speed bump?
I mean, we're right now, I mean, the two raised crosswalks was 20 times 2, so you're at 40. And then I think there's 4 to 6 sets of speed cushions out there. And you're probably 10 per set of speed cushions, 10 to 15, so 60, so we're at $100,000 to $125,000 tune up right now.
Is it possible to recycle the asphalt? So,
Now, we recycle all asphalt, but like it goes into a downstream use, it won't get into our paving.
I mean, and I thought Mayor Pro Tem said it very more calmly than perhaps I would. I remember when we had folks coming to us, particularly off of what the street was. Just south. Now it was a group of folks, it's gonna occur just south of Pine Street. We had a whole bunch of people, probably 75 people, come to our council meeting begging us to protect their children. The school not far from, we have done a great deal of traffic calming there, and I think as far as I know, it's done wonderfully. I mean, we have had accidents there, but I think we've been more in shape. And I'm always more likely to err on the side of safety, but there's risk built into all of this. I get that too. We've gotten years of complaining about Washington. And that's, I mean, on one side, I sort of say, yeah, a lot of complaints. Maybe we should do something. On the other side, it's kind of like I have driven that plenty of times, and I've just not had the same problem. I know that I appreciate Councilmember Kern's comment because I know she has a lower car. Her car is pretty low to the ground, so I think she was when she speaks on that kind of thing. And maybe it makes a difference, and we have to have traffic calming that works for everybody. But I'm still somewhat skeptical. I'm very skeptical about it. It's more than just skeptical about Washington, because there's a lot of people that drive there every day if they have any problem. We never ever. And there are people who complain about it, and they are the same people over and over. As some of the people who represent them will be able to tell, whether that's true, but I know one person, and I know one former council member who complained about it all the time. That is not a reason to change and spend the kind of money that we're talking about. In my view, that may be different for others. And I think a mixture of things you guys do a lot of, I don't know where I would say experimenting, but I mean, you put a lot into these decisions that you make in evaluating them. So anyway, Councilmember Kern.
Thank you. This is similar topic, but slightly different. Are we also going to make sure that we're putting in signs and then reflective paint that's on the ground? I think they're kind of like V-shaped that tell the driver that there is a like a raised crosswalk or a speed bump, like the new one that went on Front Street, especially at night when you're driving on Front. It's very hard to see any indication that that is a speed bump coming up. So you start to slow down instead of you're right on it and now you're slamming your brakes on. I think if the intention is for us to have people drive slower, giving them notice to slow down is not harmful.
Yeah, every installation of speed cushions or raised crosswalk has the appropriate reflective striping and advanced signage, in some cases signage at the bump. So everything's marked according to standards. If we want to expand our standards, we could explore that. I think, again, we feel what we've put out there is adequate.
So, may I jump in, Chris, one more time?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I agree with you, Kurt. You're saying that we're meeting a standard. That's like saying just let's accept what the norm is. What I'm kind of suggesting is that maybe we explore going beyond that standard, that a lot of the markings are not sufficient, especially since, like, not since, but especially when there's a new one that's been installed. And so people aren't aware of it. I don't think the object is to have people hit it hard at the speed limit at 25 miles an hour. I think the object is to get people to slow down. And I think if we take additional measures beyond the standard, I think it would be helpful to drivers and might help them, take the speed bumps at a much slower speed, and therefore maybe they are less jarring.
I think this is where traffic calming gets dangerous. We start to design on the fly with anyone's opinion, whether it's a council member or a resident. And then if there are accidents, we're trying to justify why we did this here or there or didn't do it at all. So I think we're open to ideas. Maybe if you have good examples of something you've seen that you like better, that helps us guide us more specifically to what you might want to see. We could explore some options. But I also would just be cautious, and that's why I started out with how I started the presentation of we do put a lot of thought into things. We do follow standards for reasons, and there are consequences to just kind of making designs up on the fly. But we will do whatever the council wants to do.
And by the way, I think I'm going to stop the questions after Councilman Hefner's question, because I see from the number of slides, again, we've got more slides to come, and we'll make sure.
Yeah, mine is a comment, not a question, which is, and I welcome Councilmember Hamilton's input, but I've heard a lot from folks about the crosswalk you have there at the corner on Bella Vista, where it crosses over into the open space. And Kurt, I know you have as well. And if it's possible, I'd like to see that moved up sort of onto the priority list rather than at the time the street was repaved.
For raised crosswalk.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm gonna ask you to hold on to it. Why don't we keep going and we'll come back, I promise you, Councilman. When we come back to the slide.
And I'm taking notes, we'll try to sum up the action items when we get to the end, so we won't forget this discussion, we're just pinning it.
And you forgot the fourth E is experience. And I think experience is kind of like us all with our little points of view about every single.
Absolutely. You guys provide the full experience every time. Great.
I'm not sure that was the same thing.
Oh, no, yeah,
Same thing.
oh, yeah. All right, so I think we've hit this slide pretty well. We'll carry on and we'll get into some of the next topics. And of course, these are gonna get to probably some similar level of discussions. So one of the things we did in the past year, touch on Polk Dahlia. So this all started when we had two in the span of about 6 months to a year, auto pedestrian accidents. So we had a couple of school children. Thankfully, in this case, there was no fatalities. There was some serious injuries, I believe, on the second accident. And so we had a pretty good concern coming from the community. And those concerns were a lack of defined bike lanes, partially because of on-street parking, concerns for speeding, concerns for the school zones, and how the community can react a little bit more safely. So what was next? So what did we imply, or what did we do? We went out, we put down speed cushions. So these are what we just talked through. See on this slide, some of the striping that leads up to it, or the reflective stripes that make you aware. There's also signage on the side of the road. Now we installed a raised crosswalk here. Again, very similar to the speed cushion, but it gets you across and visibility to the crossing. We installed these advisory bike lanes, the dash lines here. And then we installed the green thermal bike box at Dahlia and Cherry. So we'll touch base. What's next? We're going to currently in 2026, we're planned to resurface that corridor. So any recommendations that would come would be implemented hopefully during that paving cycle. Currently, we don't have any specific CIP to address any of these recommendations, but most of it falls within the normal resurfacing CIP budget. And so then we'll make that recommendation to make those approved in 2026. So once after we got, what I would say too on this for questions will be probably a great time to summarize at the end of each case study before we jump into the next one. So feel free to interrupt me, certainly entitled, but just keep that in mind. So Polk Dahlia, we did a pre-implementation survey, a post-implementation survey. This slide here kind of shows you a mix of the blue is who responded only to the first survey, green is only to the second, and the red shows both. So pretty good mix of results. Touching base, so this is a feeling of what was installed. What are people's overall thoughts on what we did? So initially we asked, hey, is there a speeding problem out here? So on this left slide, out of 119 survey responses, 71% of the respondents said, yeah, we have a speeding problem. We then followed up with, at the end, after we implemented this and it was in place this past fall, we put out another survey, and 65% said a speed problem remained. 65% believe the speeding problem does not remain. Then we asked a couple of questions, again, pre and post. Do you think pedestrians and cyclists are practicing safe habits? Safe habits can mean crossing. Are they looking for the lanes? Are they riding in the bike lanes? Are they riding in the parking lanes and weaving into the driving lane? And so this was a pretty open-ended question with, again, the green here, majority of people before the implementations thought that pedestrians and cyclists were practicing safe habits. After, he actually got kind of a surprising result that more people started, pedestrians and cyclists were not practicing safe habits.
That may be a little bit more citywide. We are finding that throughout the city that is now a concern. We have a lot of people that aren't, a lot of children, a lot of adults that aren't really coming to a stop and making sure they're safe to cross before entering. We don't know if that may be a global trend, but it is a little bit of a different result here on Galley.
Do you have any of the specific comments that were shared for the comments?
We do have some of those in
I
there.
think you can just give us a flavor.
Oh, man.
It's okay if you can.
Off the top of my head. No, but it's more, they're more just feelings of, you know, again, it's the e-scooters. The uncomfortable levels of, it's a variety of different topics. Some that aren't really comfortable inside of the advisory bike lane, some of the vehicles that don't know what to be in. Situations, but some of the comments are also just almost hard to understand. For example, how did some of these improvements not improve safety for a pedestrian? Might be uncomfortable for a driver, but how does it not really improve? You know, how does a race crosswalk? Somebody else. So the comments are all over the place. There's a ton of them.
Did you distinguish in the survey between cyclists on bikes and e-bikes? Cyclists on e-bikes?
No,
It'd be interesting to see whether there's a difference. I know, you know, so many people cyclists are not about the kind of cyclists that Councilman is.
Nobody's ever.
No, I mean, they're really hot, but I mean, people as e-bikes have become more prevalent. You know,
they're a different animal for sure. And I think as we start to learn more about the dynamic of those we start to separate a little bit, certain categories.
as we go forward, you might do another survey closer to. Be interested to see. I mean, to me, it would be interesting to see. Maybe my hypothesis is wrong.
I was also wondering, did you ask people about what kind of transportation they use along the road? Is it bicyclists who's responding? Is it a primary car?
We didn't get into that ground.
Yeah, I mean, in many cases, it's both, I guess, right? Along that corridor. You know, traffic calming in general, and you know, our recommendations we're listening to the neighborhood and then recommending adjustments that are in line with what's safe and what the neighborhood wants. But in general, traffic calming does cause everyone to think more when it's effective. So that means cars feel less comfortable because they have to think about it. They can't just turn on the tunes and zone out. And the same thing with sometimes with the bikers, and we love our multimodal, and also there's some flavor of biker that is also dangerous to pedestrians because they don't yield and they're going to be fast. So it's really hard to say if it's people being uncomfortable or if they just don't like it, you know. And we spent a lot of time on this survey to tease a lot out, and then, you know, after the fact, it's easy to go back and say, man, I would done some things different. So we'll take some notes, but in general, we made people uncomfortable, right? Traffic calming did what it was supposed to do.
Yeah, it looks like it literally slowed things down. Yeah, that's
Perception.
That's the perception, and that you made people uncomfortable. That seems to be. Most.
Well, I think we'll jump into some of that a little bit here in a second. So I know we're short on time, so a little bit short on time. I think we're gonna run. I'm just gonna keep going. So what I'm gonna do is just talk briefly about these slides, you know, these colors here to know to do the improve comfort in the corridor for cars. No, well, that's kind of the goal, right? So that's probably a positive response. Do you think the improvements helped improve comfort in the corridor for pedestrians and cyclists? There was a goal to improve the comfort there, so I think there's a little bit of some feedback. And then do you think the improvements have helped improve safety in the schools? So those kind of are three guiding principles and themes that we had going into the survey. And that seemed to increase a little bit more yes there, but still majority of the responses were not really in favor of that comfort. This slide here talks about the advisory bike lanes specifically, and this is probably, I would say, our most controversial aspect of this improvement out here. Again, we threw the raised crosswalk, the speed cushions, and the bike and the advisory bike lane. Talk about all of them. This one here, the different shades of red are talking about reducing safety, and then the green shades are the people that responded that felt like it improved the safety for vehicles.
Let's go back one slide for a second. Just looking at the middle chart. I mean, I'm just trying to sort of figure out what the message is there. What about it would make this? I mean, do we have any sense why people think it's less safe for pedestrians and bikes? It just doesn't make any sense to me.
I would tend to agree. And when we look at those comments, what I tend to feel is we see the responses from people that didn't like the advisory bike lanes. And it has a feeling that they just responded negatively to everything.
Yeah.
That's the feeling that I see in the trend that I see in reviewing the data.
These are people who just don't like it and want to say something. Or some of them.
It's possible. It's possible.
I mean, maybe a different take is this advisory bike lanes are a newer concept. They are, and they have a use when you have a road that has a lot of different uses and you don't have room for regular bike lanes, which people are used to. So when you don't get a solution that something you're used to, then you tend to feel like you don't like that. Maybe an analogy, and it could be a bad analogy, is the flashing left turn light that has become a standard. But as that was becoming a new standard, maybe people hated that. Like, why did we use that? So like, I would just say change is hard. And when you have to think, people don't like to think.
I would add to the change is hard. Typically, you get more negative response on the survey when there's change. You also have a negative response bias on most surveys. People who are negative are more prone to state their opinion. Things like this. So that doesn't mean that this survey is or isn't accurate. It's just something to keep in mind when you get results like this. That's part of the factor in these things.
I don't live on Polk Diet. I don't live in Louisville, but I try to drive Polk Diet quite a bit just to try to find what's wrong. And even before we did anything, we took a group of 10 to 20 people, planners and engineers in the city. We wrote Polk Dahlia, and I think, this is just my personal opinion, when we wrote it without all the striping, we felt like we had cars on top of us and, you know, pushing us, and it felt intimidating. And I'm a confident biker, and I didn't like it. And then just last fall, we went out and wrote everything that we had installed for the year and repeat on things that had been installed. And we had a condition where we had I think like 15 people in the advisory bike lanes, and we had a ton of traffic calm, and everything navigated really well, really safely. And it happened with our group. Multiple large trucks, we're talking lifted trucks, came at the same time. Well, we had a big group of bikers, and everyone just kind of worked together, and it worked. Now, did we all have to think a little bit and we have to apply some brakes or speed up? Absolutely, but I still felt comfortable. So I think the advisory bike lanes are a good solution. What is it? What the neighborhood wants? We're just saying we don't know. It doesn't seem like it. And this seems to we don't have speed data that shows that they slowed things down, and that's a slide coming up. But so in this instance, we're just saying we think it's okay, but we can take it or leave it, depending on feelings.
We've had a couple meeting. Councilmember Hamilton and then Councilmember.
Thank you, Mayor. Along the thread of the responses to this particular slide. I think what might be helpful in the future when we look at this data again is to get a sub-analysis of those individuals who responded to both surveys. When I'm looking at the beautiful slide you all presented of who responded to the first, who responded to the second, who responded to the both, I see a fair number who responded to primarily the second only, which is the green one, I believe. And I would love to see, for those who took the time to submit before and after, did their responses change at all? And then additionally, I do think maybe in future surveys, it would be helpful to Council Member Cooperman's point to understand a little more about the user and how they're using that that road. Because if if there's 200 people that responded and 75 of them are cyclists who say they love it, but then you have the 125 or people in their cars that say they don't love it, I think that's a helpful detail to have in the future.
Thank you. Councilmember Kurt.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Hamilton brought up some good points. I think that, getting more clarity in the data, the polling data would be good. But I wanted to remark on two things. I think when you're talking about the bike lanes and those new advisory bike lanes, Kurt, I think a lot of drivers, when they're responding to this, it's not just about adding the bike lanes. I think people like the fact that there's a space for cyclists. I think it's more the way that Polk and Dahlia has been striped for vehicles, even with the advisory signs on the side of the road, it's still very confusing. People, follow the lines, they ride right down the middle, and then when there's an oncoming car, it's very confusing for them, and they have to they feel like they should immediately move over into what is now the bike lane. And my understanding is they're supposed to use it like a regular 2-lane road, except when there's a bike, and then drive in the center. And I think people use it the opposite way because of where the lines are. And that might be affecting some of the responses to this. It's not so much they're commenting on the bike lane, it's the striping for cars that's the problem. The other point was you guys commenting on, well, these kind of surveys tend to drive negative information. Well, the same people who responded to this slide also gave us the slide 3 back, right? The one that talks about the speed going down, the feeling that the speed has gone down. It's the same people. And you have the majority who agree that, yeah, after the change was made, the speed did go down. So that's not a quote unquote negative response. And those same people are then responding genuinely, I think, on this slide. So I wouldn't discount this as, it's an anomaly or just negative people, because they're telling you a response you like in one respect, and then this one you don't like. But again, I think it's not about the advisory bike lanes. I think it's how hard it is to figure out where to drive on the road. Thank you.
Is this perhaps an area where the council would like to see us do additional outreach and education around advisory bike lanes? I mean, we're open. What we're trying to say is we went out and we tried some new things, not brand new that have never been tried, but we tried some new things. And now we have some data, and you all have a lot of data and perspectives and input from residents. And so hearing where you all sit on this is helpful, because we do have strong opinions sometimes, but on this one, I don't think we do.
I would answer that I mean, this is an update from council, right? And it's for a little bit of guidance that we provide tonight. I mean, there will be time for public input, because we have promised that, as the time for restriping comes up. I don't know. I have mixed feelings about the education. I mean, there are a lot of efforts to do education. I've seen, and I think maybe you'd be a better, others would be better counseling, what they've heard from different people. I'm hearing less about, I don't understand how this works. Makes no sense about how it works. I think it's clear plenty of people don't like it. It's uncomfortable or, I mean, and that's not a small thing, but I don't think it's that they don't fundamentally understand it. What I've heard more is people who are not accustomed to it, newer people, friends of mine that drive in, and this is what I hear people say. I have friends who visited me and they tried driving on this. But, I don't know how much more that education really needs to happen between now and the time we reevaluate. I think we'll get information from people closer to the time to doing it, but I'm not sure more needs to be done right now, but I'd be very interested in what other people would say.
Yeah, I think I generally agree. The thing that I think is really great about the advisory bike lane is that's always been, there have always been bikes there, right? Like all you did is add paint to show where the bikes have always been. And when I explain it to people that way, often I get a light bulb moment like, oh yeah, there always have been bikes there. And I've always had to go around the bikes. Like I could never drive through the bike in the past. I had to slow down or go around. And so it's just the same. All it's doing is trying to bring some visual awareness. That being said, I mean, I do think some folks, and I think the number is shrinking over time, are legitimately confused. I think if this was up to me, I would say, well, is there an advisory bike lane 2.0 that sort of communicates the same visual message in a way that's more clear somehow, or has bigger or better signage? I mean, I don't think you guys did a lot of really good education, like the materials were clear and well presented. I think it got us a lot. I'm not sure that campaign is necessarily needed again, but perhaps there's a way for the signage to be more clear, or the striping to be more intuitive, and that's your domain, ours. But overall, I mean, the concept just makes such intuitive sense to me that all you're doing is trying to make the invisible visible, so that you do have that visual cue that you might encounter a bike here. You're sort of thinking about it, expecting it, rather than thinking this is sort of a bigger 45-mile car down the street.
Yeah, two things. One is, obviously I missed a comment, apologize. A Tesla does not know how to drive down this road, right? Just for like AI, like what do I do on it? Like it doesn't know how to drive on that road. So that's an interesting point of clarification for, is this obvious? It's novel, right? It's a novel for our community road. And so someone is always going to be confused, whether it's a first timer or a young driver, someone is going to be confused. To Dietrich's point, I wonder, and this is actually a question, why not leave a yellow line, maybe not the classic yellow line, maybe like less frequent striping, but a yellow line that helps me understand, oh, I'm supposed to stay to the right of middle. There's a yellow line, but there's a bike lane that I am driving on. So I think that kind of gets like, the bike is absolutely important, it has its lane, but I'm supposed to be right of the yellow line. That I get. Tesla probably gets that. I have to be right at this yellow line. Now I have a conflict because I know I need to be right at the yellow line, but I kind of want to be out of the bike lane. But those two, I think I win with staying right of the yellow line. I'm going to stay right of the yellow line. But I'm really thinking about the fact that I'm driving over a bike lane, which is uncomfortable. So I think that's what I've heard is like, as someone who respects a biker, a bike lane, I don't want to drive in a bike lane. I don't ever do that anywhere. I don't drive in a bike lane. So as someone who cares, I want to get over. And so I end up going in the middle because that feels respectful to the bikers. But that's not what I'm supposed to do. So if there was a yellow line, I'd stay right at the yellow line, and I'd be in that conflict and I'd be thinking about it, but I would never drive right down the middle with a yellow line underneath me. I would never do that as a driver. And so I don't know, you guys did a lot of research. I've seen the images of this road in other places, I never saw the image of this road in other places with a yellow line. Has that been tried? Did you guys think about it and decide not to do it? Could that be 2.0?
Yeah, I mean, this is where, you know, we're starting to bleed into intuitive behavior versus traffic law.
Mhm.
So when you put in the double yellow line, like I can tell you, this is equal opposite reaction stuff. People wanted double yellow lines at curves, like on, I think Mulberry's this spot.
Mm.
And we put a double yellow line in. And then we got calls of, well, how do I get out of my driveway? I'm not allowed to cross the double yellow line. So that was a little call. So like, I think, yes, we can rack our brains and think about what maybe advisory 2.0 looks like. I don't know that we'll find something, but we can do that as follow-up. I'll put it on the list. We'll do some more research, see if there's any iterations out there that we don't know about.
That's more what I'm like, I think it's important. I'm actually not trying to say, you should put a yellow line down the middle. That's maybe how it's coming out. I'm curious if other communities have tried that version and if it has more success, like what, and maybe like going back to the design, like why not the yellow line? Like, why was that removed if the intention is to keep them to the right? A dotted one, you know, like, because again, the whole idea, there used to be a yellow line. And when I come upon a bike, I go over the yellow line into head-on traffic. And I get in an accident every time. So like no one did that, right? Everyone just waited and they knew what to do. But so, yeah, I guess like I just don't, maybe I just don't understand why the yellow line was taken away if the intention was for cars to stay to the right and with the dotted, they're allowed legally to cross over it to pass something. What is the reasoning without saying you must open do like what? I don't understand why the yellow line was taken away. Maybe if I understood the reasoning behind it or why other people did it that way.
I mean, traditionally, the yellow line is only dashed to like driveway, right? Then the yellow line is yellow line, you're not supposed to cross it, so we're not trying to reinforce behaviors that go against the traffic law. By saying like, we'll put the yellow line in, because that gives you this mental level of comfort, but legally you shouldn't do it. Like,
So sorry, isn't a solid yellow line, but a dotted yellow line we can pass?
correct.
Like you can cross over.
Right. I mean, we can look into it. Yeah, we're not saying no. I think we need some time to consider
Yeah.
this. This is one of those areas where I think it gets, good intentions could go bad and we wanna like vet it. But like what we hear is, consider advisory 2.0, not advisory deletion. And see if there's ideas that, we can put out there to incrementally build upon what we've done.
What about a dotted white line?
Well, I think,
Sorry, you're gonna go get a bucket of paint right now.
Sure.
sorry.
I mean, there is, I apologize that I laughed, but like, there's a point where we just get so much striping on the road, it's, yeah.
And one, I wanna shift just back to another point to pick up on Councilmember Hamilton's point about data. I'd be really interested to hear what Fireside parents think about this.
Cameron got feedback on that.
Have you
early.
gotten
So you got a lot of feedback from the principal early. And again, it's kind of. I think if we were to get that feedback again, maybe you're starting to see some education where it's a little bit less, but the initial feedback that we got was not real favorable, we were very confused. Despite some of the educational outreach, but. You know, again, if that were to be something that was solicited again, maybe at the beginning of next school year, or maybe at the end of this school year. To see if if it's quieted down, because again, it's. That propensity of negative was, hey, dear principal, what did you do out here? I hate it, but that's 5 people versus
I'd be interested, you know, after a time when it's not just that initial changes part, but you know, now they've had a chance to sort of get through that. They've been driving it every single day, or where many of them have, or they've been biking with their kids every single day. I mean, I don't know, that's a population which I know, you know, that informed work you were informed by the fact that there was a school there. That was part of the,
Yeah, to get kids into that school zone.
right?
Cause outside of it, yeah, we didn't really have much other than sidewalk.
I mean,
I
it
mean,
doesn't,
I would also be careful. I think school zones, if you're ever been a parent and spent a lot of time in them, they're a minor form of suburban warfare. So no striking is really safe in a school zone. Like you want to try and make it safe, but it's chaos for 15-20 minutes. So like, I think that's just a tough spot to have success in. I think it's about the whole corridor and so this just a benchmark. This whole corridor carries about 3,000 cars per day. It's been out there for over a year, so do the math. That's a lot of cars. We haven't had any accidents with cars or people or bikes, despite some of the results we received. The speed data suggests people are still roughly going slightly slower, but not dramatically reduced speeds. But the perception is that there's not speeding now, when before there was. So by that account, because the reason we did this was to improve safety, we have improved safety. But that helps.
why don't we continue on, because I know you still have some slides. I mean, I really appreciate all the input and I hope you guys do. But it's, I'm sure you get through the presentation.
You guys have been great. We really are like, I know everyone wants like clean thresholds, but like we should do this now or not do it now. But we are in some areas getting into levels of comfort, which is subjective. And so we do have to do a lot of reading minds to figure out what the right balance is. So this is all good.
Yeah, and one thing I'll, kind of add is the bikes have always been there, right? And so we add this dashed line, follow my little laser pointer here. Yeah, we add that. But one of the things that's a little bit unique about the Polk Valley corridor is it does have on-street parking. But cyclists often assume that that's a bike. And they, or just want to be comfortable and they're over in that bike lane until they come up on a parked car. And then they have to, in the past, without the lines that we put out there, which were unpredictably into not necessarily oncoming vehicles, but into vehicles traveling in the same direction. We heard similar things, but when we put those bump outs and crossings, like block the bike. So realistically, yeah, if you take out this dashed line and it's effectively going back to that shared road situation, there's other options that we can look at. So all good dialogue. I think it's a lot of, for us, Kurt said, I don't know that we necessarily as engineers feel strongly one way or another. I think they're both, for we were talking bike lanes only. So take away the speed cushion slide here for benefit. The bike lane only, the advisory bike lane versus like a share the road situation. They're both kind of safe. They're both safe, right? The reality is what's more comfortable. What does the community want? What's out there? What do you all feel is the right thing? And this is one of those we can kind of submit a little bit to on whatever our opinions are. And that can vary honestly between our professional and our personal opinions. So let's keep that in mind. All right, so raised crosswalks, again, very, very receptive with some percentage of negative throughout this slide. Be improving the safety for cyclists, improving the safety for vehicles. The interesting one here is this little bit of the dark red on here, 5% said that does not improve safety for pedestrians. Those are some interesting feedback, right? But yeah,
I'm not sure.
So one unique thing about, and maybe is we have to make sure that these crossings stay compliant with ADA accessibility guidelines. We have to make sure we ramp up at that 5% or less, and 2% crossover or less, so the wheelchairs and of course the visually impaired safe crossings. So that's kind of hard to really have too much insight into. It exists. Barb, let's go.
There's a question from Councilmember.
Yeah, thank you. Can you go back to the last slide, please, with the pie chart?
Which pie chart?
This one's fine. I didn't add up all those numbers, but are they, so I'm trying to figure out how to interpret this. Is it a pie chart? Cause all those, can people select more than one answer? Therefore,
Yeah, so this is a pie chart, so yeah, they can select more than one, so it'll add up to more than the 199 that we got.
okay, thank you.
Talked about the speed data. We're basically seeing, we saw an initial improvement, significant improvement in production. With the speeds creeping back up a little bit, in the latest rendition showing that people are getting a little bit more comfortable out there and they're driving. So what's next? Again, recommendations that'll come with likely the 2026 resurfacing. This is kind of our feeling as staff from what we had observed from the input. We are open, obviously, to your input. We would recommend installing the raised crosswalks at Madison, keeping that, reinstalling it once we pave, because we'll be milling everything off. Resurfacing, install the speed cushions at the same locations that exist today. Based on the feedback, initially, we're probably recommending no advisory bike lanes, get more of a Shero scenario, maybe with or without the yellow line that we see in this example here. Again, open to for interpretation and feedback there. And then the bike box that closed this through and right turn lane and made this left lane a through right and left and required the no right on red. We have at this particular location for the bike boxes, we've received I've received no positive feedback on it, to be honest. So I have received positive bike box video via Appia, maybe at McCaslin, a little bit more appropriate of a situation for it. But this one, I'm pretty strongly in favor myself of, from my experiences of removing it. It just creates a lot of people taking the right, using that bike box. And I think it's creating more of an unsafe situation from that perspective.
So the only adjustment we'll make to that, as we heard, look into advisory 2.0 for the one recommendation. So we'll look into things and we'll come back with some options. One of those might be the option we're showing with the Shero and W line. Another one might be the additional configurations of advisory.
I'm utterly confused about this, and maybe I'm on. For me.
Which part?
Just like, well, for example, the picture of Shero, no center line. Well, there's a center line. I don't know what does that mean?
It means that this picture is an example and we wouldn't install that. We would oppose putting that center line in. For the example of the double yellow, so in that share the road situation, you come up to a cyclist that's in that and you're fully parked, you're not legally able to cross over to get around that bike. So it's an improvement that we wouldn't want to put the double yellow. So getting into this.
So you don't want the center line there, rather than moving the bike box?
It's tough because legally, like if you want enforcement on this corridor, legally, if someone goes over the double yellow, they're breaking the law. But we do that, like you said, every day for bikes, like people are used to doing that. The minute we take the double yellow line and we put a dash bike lane there, everyone kind of loses their mind over that part, right? So I think what we're describing before is perhaps the double yellow advisory 2.0, we look into a dashed yellow with the advisory bike lane, or there's some other form of Shero. I think there's a lot of ways we can go about this, and I want to take the feedback tonight and come back with exhibits that actually show you guys, so we don't get confused.
But that, just as an example, that picture is something that is the confusing arrangement as it currently stands, because if you have a bike there, you're telling somebody to move across a double line, which is a no.
I don't think people are confused by it. We have it in town now in other areas. People do it.
They cross the line.
Yeah.
And so it's the double yellow that's like, why aren't you doing that? Right. Gotcha. There's other stuff.
Yeah, so, my understanding, and I do ride my bike around town, Front Street's another one where, again, from that same spot. There's that little bike, symbol on the road, which to me means, hey, I'm allowed to be right in the middle of this road and you'll just have to wait and drive slowly behind me. I have that right. But particularly in the front, there's not another one of those that I can remember all the way to Pine. So like, there's one, and then there's no like, look at see, I'm allowed. So like, if they were more frequent, right, that kind of signals, remember, I'm literally riding my bike over the symbol that says I'm allowed to have my bike in the middle of the road. So that's one thing, is like a more frequent repetition of that. But then I was kind of wondering, is it just financial consideration, because paint costs money, that isn't a bike lane right in the middle of the road? Because that's what you're saying it is. It's a bike lane directly in the middle of the road. So instead of an advisory that's on the right side, the advisory is right in the middle, which I think is worse. I honestly do, but it's like, that's what that is, right? Is the bike should be in the middle of the road. And if it's no yellow line, go around, solid yellow line, don't go around, dotted yellow line, maybe go around if it's safe. A lot of different messages, but you're saying I should ride my bike in the middle of the road with that, right?
Yeah, I
And
mean,
so no, I've never seen a bike lane with the two lines drawn in the middle of the road, but that's what legally you're trying to communicate there, right? Is,
it's communicating to share the road.
yeah, bikes have a right to be in the middle of this road. So, anyways, it was just sort of wanted you guys to see the same thing I was saying, that as I ride my bike, I have experience both with like, I'm allowed to be in the middle of this road, but there are no cars in the park lane, so I'll get over and let that car go by me because I'm nice. But I know I have a right to be in the middle, but I think if they're more frequent, just the frequency would help paint the picture literally that I'm allowed to be in the middle of this and you need to be sharing with me instead of once every few hundred yards.
That's moving.
But bikes already have the right to use the full lane.
Yeah.
Whether there's a bike painted on the road or not. So why do you have to have the bike painted there?
So.
I mean, yeah, it's true. Everyone's correct, right?
Sorry.
Yeah, you're so right.
Yeah, we're just trying to discover what configuration might provide the highest level of intuitiveness and the highest level of comfort at the same time.
I was just gonna say, I think, the Mayor Pro Tem's comments highlight a lot of the reasons that the Sparrow is falling a little bit out of favor. I'm sure you guys are aware of this, especially among the cycling communities, that it is, A, you're allowed to do it anyway, B, no drivers actually treated that way, like when you're in the middle of the lane, drivers. I've had somebody try and pass me around one of the median things along Pine, I go around the wrong side of the median to get around me. When I was riding down Pine, like basically going the speed limit on the bike. Like they don't, I don't think a shadow is that's like advisory bike lane, version -1. But certainly they have, I'm sure they have their appropriate place where there should be no other option, but I've never been impressed that they do much of anything that would cause frustration.
Is there, I mean, I see staff recommendation, right, on this. So now, again, I want to distinguish between what you're recommending or what we might be providing guidance for you tonight, and what might be better for additional public input. At the time for public input, my understanding is we're not making that the resurfacing doesn't take place for some time.
1 year, so
Yeah.
not this summer, but next summer.
Right, and I think that's a time when, of course, we're gonna need to get, I think it's important personally to get quite a bit of help, because we're gonna get it, regardless if we allow it or not. And I think we should get it, because we told people, give it to them. So right now, I just want to understand what it is you want us, just these four, that's what you're looking for Port Valley? Right?
Yep, that's what we're
Just these-
recommending, other than the third one, which we've adjusted a little bit with your input. As far as looking at advisory bike lane configurations, so yes, we're recommending that. I think, what does public feedback input look like to you on these types of projects? We have, each time we put out, so we did mail to each house a flyer, and that's about $5,000. So we've spent $10,000 into neighborhood outreaches on this neighborhood to get input. But just to kind of make sure we get it right, what does a good traffic calming public process look like to you?
You know, if I had an answer to that, I bet 6 people would probably disagree with me, just on the council.
That's our experience too.
So I think that's a question we all ought to think about, whether, you know, in what form we do that. I think, to your point at the very beginning, the changes that were made, particularly were just provided, some of them rancorous public comments, I think we've seen. And I think there's things we would do differently than what happened lead to that. Frankly, I don't think staff deserved what it got, and to the extent that I'm allowed, and I can't really allow me. I apologize for the city of Louisville for how you all were treated, because I think you were treated awfully. I don't ever want to see that again. I mean, people have strong feelings about this. They can express strong feelings, but the comment that I heard about you the one night when the person complained about you don't even care about any of this, you don't live here, not all that long removed from your saving the town from the fire or helping to do that, just about exploded my head. And we're not going to let that happen in quite the way that it happened at that time. I mean, so what I can tell you is not how it should happen yet. I can tell you that that level that is not going to happen, as far as if I can control it in any way, because I just think that was not the way you ever wanted to. But I don't think we're going to decide how we do it, but I think it's really important, based both on what you said before and just how strongly I think we need to, you know, criticize that level of shrill, awful behavior.
I might also offer there, sometimes too much public input isn't always helpful. This is a public health and safety topic, so you know, we don't go out and have neighborhood meetings on should the chief write a ticket at 3 miles over or 5 miles over. You know, they go out there and they do their job to protect public health and safety. I don't have neighborhood meetings on what levels of chlorine or fluoride I should be adding to the water, and then take the pulse of that night's meeting. Like, so there is, to some extent, it is okay to make decisions based around the policy of safety, slowing people down and comfort, and just make that decision, because that's what we were hired or elected to do, and that will come with change and people that don't like that direction. But we have had an uptick of deaths in this community, in our vulnerable population of kids almost dying, or severely injured, or elderly people dying. So we meet the trends around all this, and we do have a responsibility to just make a decision. It is different than a Facebook thumbs up. So I would just offer that.
Can I say one thing on that? No. Last time when we were discussing it in chambers, I said that I was going to recommend going with what you had recommended. And the reason was because I'm not a traffic engineer. And what I've noticed about the accidents that have happened is that it hasn't been strictly because of the way the street was striped or speed bumps or lack thereof. In some cases, it was the pedestrian that was crossing a road without a crosswalk, without a light, and didn't see the car. Or the car was driving and lights, sun in their face, they didn't see the pedestrian crossing the road. It wasn't because of the way the street was designed. It was because of the individuals involved not paying attention or not being able to see what they needed to see. So it wasn't engineering that was, I don't think, was the reason for the accidents.
And we do a review on all accidents, and was that a preventable accident? Could infrastructure have prevented that or not? And is there patterns in that location?
Right.
So, yeah,
Are you taking public input? Is this
Not-
too small?
not tonight.
Right, about the middle of the road, right?
Yeah, we're not talking, we're not taking public input. This was,
So
no,
I'll
we're
send.
not talking. We will, but we're not gonna take. I mean, we will get public input. This is just an update.
I'll send it to you about biking on the line.
I appreciate that.
Should we move
Uh,
on to the next topic?
Pardon me?
Should we keep going?
keep going.
Let's go.
Next slide.
Yeah, let's go to the next.
All right, next up, next traffic case study was the Appia. We had, as you mentioned, a lot of community concern of speeding. It's difficult to slow down different side streets, pedestrian safety, comfort, crossing the street is a challenge. Then, of course, the place in which safety and comfort was not ideal. We held multiple on-site meetings on March 7th, morning and afternoon, and also held that meeting on March 11th to discuss some of the improvements to be made. We ultimately were approved to put in the buffered bike lane. That's what this is showing on this picture here, with the buffer between the single lane of traffic to narrow this down to one lane in each direction. We also put this thermal bike box, which allows the cyclists that want to make a left turn to stay up here and sort of navigate, get around the front of the traffic at a red light. So what guided this? So our objective was to enhance the safety for comfort, pedestrians, cyclists, motorists along the corridor through targeted improvements. It's a balance. Pedestrian, cyclists, motorists, it's a conflict, it's tough. So what guided these decisions? Well, we had 26 crashes on the corridor from 2021 to 2023. 11 were rear ends, 2 were injuries to cyclists. We wanted to make sure that this aligned with the FHWA's safe system approach that we covered early on. And we wanted to leverage the proven countermeasures, those 28 proven countermeasures. So we introduced that lane reduction modification, the buffered bike lanes, and then we installed a new RFB over there, which is that rectangular flashing beacon at El Dorado to bring visibility to the pedestrians crossing. All of this was supported with recommendations within that 2019 adopted transportation master plan. And these were multimodal improvements that were safe to make that safer street for all ages and abilities. Some initial feedback and data that we've received in our collection points again. So before our road improvements were installed, we were seeing again eastbound, westbound 43, 41 with a reduction down to 38, 37 around this area. So we're seeing anywhere from 3 to roughly 4 miles an hour at location 1 and 2. Location 3, where it does jump into that 30-mile-an-hour zone, we're still seeing speed just a little bit higher. Another aspect of the improvements, and this was installed not necessarily related to the striping program last year, but it's that no right turn on red. This was installed and recommended as part of our South Boulder Road pedestrian improvement project from a few years back. That was due to 9 crashes from 2015 to 2018, 4 in 2016 alone. There were 5 crashes in 2019 and 2022, with 1 injuring a bicyclist. Since these have been installed, there was 1 crash caused by a right turn on red. This over here discusses a little bit of the level of service, we call the loss, the LOS, D and C. We actually do see a little bit of an improvement in, with the right turn on red, restriction. And that's generally because when you're deeper than a first couple of cars at that right on red, so if you're able to take a right on red, you the first car, you see a gap. Might take you a few seconds to go. The second car, a couple more seconds, you can go. By the time the third or fourth car goes, you're probably getting your green light. With the improvements to the signal there, we actually were able to improve that because more cars, more depth will get through on each signal versus the previous cycle. Let's see. So what are we looking here? What are some potential improvements that we can do? Well, directional ramps. So
We, pause, so we're about to go into like, think more things we could do on Via Appia if we wanted to. That assumes the configuration stays the way it is. So I think it's a good place to pause and kind of get people's experiences on Via Appia, input you might have, or the residents may can.
Go back a couple of slides to the speed slide. Yeah. I really appreciate it. I started off saying location one, wow, that's exactly what it was, right? That produced it by 5 miles an hour before. And then a little less, still not doing bad on the second location. On the third location, just not much change.
There's a speed transition right there.
Yeah, I mean, is that what you kind of would have expected?
Yeah, we forecasted that if we did this project, we'd slow speeds down 3 to 5 miles per hour. And add comfort to the corridor, and we've slowed speeds down 3 to 5 miles per hour. And we've added comfort to the corridor for most use cases.
I also want to sort of throw out there, that it doesn't look like there have been any fewer cars driving.
This has not impacted traffic volumes at all.
I shared this with Kurt already, but at our Ward 3 board meeting a couple weeks ago, we got only one comment from Via Appia. And it was a long comment, but it ended with whoever designed the new road was a genius. So for what it's worth, but totally serious, totally earnest. I think she had been confused by it or skeptical of it at first. I really appreciate it. What a better experience it is.
It's a credit to these traffic engineers sitting here.
Genius.
I'll add to that, I had one resident from Ward 2 come up and complain to me about the Appia when this striping was first done. And came up to me about 3 or 4 months ago and said, I just want to apologize. I think now that I've driven it and I've gotten used to it, it's wonderful. And so the initial reaction, it's new, it's different. Why did you do that? And now they're starting to see why and the benefits. I do also want to emphasize that fire survivors really want to keep it as possible 2 lanes for evacuation. So not putting any, raised things in the way of it being 2 lanes in each direction.
Councilmember Kern.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I do appreciate all the studies that have come up, and unlike Councilmember Hefner and his experience, I continue to, on the streets and at our ward meetings, hear repeatedly from residents that they do not like this change to 2 lanes. They would love to see other measures in place. I still get residents who are closer to your section 3 by Lafayette Street, where you have not seen the 3 to 5 mile an hour decrease, right? You have in the other parts of Yappy, but not there. That is where we get the greatest number of concerns with kids crossing the street to the middle school. And it's the blind curve kind of coming around in there, like you said, where the speed changes, people have a hard time getting in and out. That seems to be where we haven't affected any speeds. That seems to be the area of great concern. I hear a lot from people that they're still very frustrated. They do not want it to be 1 lane, especially in those areas of 1 and 2. They would rather see, better like crossing if it's needed. Although I don't get the comments from the public about the ability to cross the streets necessarily there, except at Tyler, where people might like the cross lights that are actually not a hawk, but an actual traffic light that most people understand immediately. That's activated not by a vehicle, but by a person crossing, so that it works like a traffic light when a pedestrian needs to cross. So I am getting a lot of conversation, and some of it does come from, as Councilmember Fahey mentioned, the concern that it is only one lane, and people will, in an emergency, only use the one lane. Because right now it's not like it's 2 lanes because we've moved it over and you can't actually drive next. You'd have to stick a car where the bike lane and buffer is. And that's not been clearly identified as an emergency evacuation route. And it has to be drivable with 2 lanes for an emergency. And we just hear this repeatedly from people that don't like this. And as far as the traffic light on South Boulder Road, we still get a lot of comments because not everybody drives at rush hour. They drive at other times of the day, that they're sitting there with nobody coming down South Boulder Road for a long, like sitting at that red light for a long period of time. They could have long gone. And is there a possibility that we can look into doing something like the flashing yellow, or it's a no right turn on red like we have at 88th and what is that, Campus Drive? When pedestrians are present and they're actually pushing the crosswalk, that's when the big no right turn on red is actually activated. Things like that. Those are, so I would love for us to look at some other solutions rather than keeping an always no right turn on red, because it may be effective at a few periods of time, a few times of the day, but not most. So allowing that traffic to flow better would be great. I mean, I see the speed things, but I don't agree with that. I do like some of the improved suggestions that you're going to make coming up, though.
Councilmember Kern, I have a question for you because I appreciate both. I mean, I know that you and Councilmember Fahey get maybe more feedback than probably any of us on that, on Via Appia. What is it's setting aside the concern about evacuation, which I think is real, and I wonder if there are ways. My bet is that there are ways of handling that signage that might be worth trying. I'm not sure, but set that aside for just a second. Why do people not like the new configuration? Is it they don't like to reduce their speed? Are they? What's the complaint?
No, I've talked to a lot of people who actually don't speed. They wouldn't even mind if you made Via Appia 30 instead of 35. That's not their issue. They don't like the fact that they're like sometimes caught maybe behind like a large slow truck and now they can't get around them, or vice versa. They're doing the speed limit. And this happens to me personally, but I've heard this from other people as well. They're doing the speed limit and cars are coming up upon them and somebody wants to get around. There's no way to get around them now. So they're being tailgated, and that creates a greater danger than that person just doing 2 or 3 miles an hour, driving past them and getting in front of them or what have you. They also found it, I get a lot of people commenting that it's just when they turn onto Via Appia from McCaslin, so headed to the rec center, that if they're trying to make a right into the rec center, again, it's very difficult because cars are now going around them into an area that's not a lane, but you slow down in that lane and those cars have to come to a stop for you to turn in. And, I mean, at busy times, I'm sure that's more bothersome than others, but mostly people just don't like to be able to have the flow of the road, being able to just drive. Instead, it's very restricted, and they don't like a lot of the tailgating that's happening because they are not speeding and somebody wants to get around them.
I understand. I mean, one of the things that really hit me in the discussion that we had, I remember something that Kurt said, which was, we can't legislate around people violating the law. If somebody is speeding, and they happen to come up to a car right in front of them that's doing speed limit. To me, that's, I mean, I don't know what you do with that. You know, I mean, the whole point, you can't, I don't think you create, I mean, this is just my point. I don't think you create a whole, or you resume a whole other lane just to allow those people to speed around another car. And speed, I mean, literally speed around, not just go around, but speed around another car. That just doesn't, to me, that's just not something, that's not something we can really, wow.
Yeah,
The
but
other thing, Chris,
Wait,
people are having,
wait
I
for
was gonna
just,
say, okay,
Councilmember Kernan, on the,
yeah, I mean, transparently, when you have 4 lanes, it gives drivers that option. Then we're talking about free flow on a wide open street, a lot of straight is gonna have high speeds. So the design, by reducing to 1 lane, the cars that do go to the speed limit slow down the cars that don't go to the speed limit. And so that is the purpose of the design transparently. We're not trying to trick anybody. That's what happens. So you're right. You do get stuck if there may be once in a blue moon, there's someone going 25 and the 35 and you get stuck behind them. But our speed data shows that the average group of people is going, 38, 39 and 36 miles an hour. So 85th percentile speed suggests a normal day is going closer to normal speed. So that was the intent.
to the point that Councilmember Kernan was mentioning before about the danger of that, the rear enders and stuff like that, that might happen if somebody's speeding up to a car going the speed limit. Have we had more or fewer, I mean, can you tie some of what you've got here to an increase, decrease in rear end accidents?
But we have, to my knowledge, I don't think we've had any rear end accidents or very few.
we have.
Yeah, no, I'm not, I don't have that data memorized for this, but I believe our crash history has come down. Do you have that?
The accident.
Yeah.
The same day as the fatality, there was a rear end at Coyote Run, like same time.
At the
almost.
beach,
At the
right,
beacon.
right, so, yeah, we had those 2 accidents through that transition period. But I think since then, I don't think we've had the same pace of accidents, maybe even more reduced. I thought we had that in the presentation, but we don't. We'll get that info for you. But we have not seen an uptick in rear end accidents.
Councilmember Kernan, I know you were gonna follow.
Thank you. So the other concern that we hear a lot are that people are having a very hard time because it takes turning onto, well, not a hard time, it just takes longer than, nobody wants to wait for 15 cars to go by. It used to be like 5 cars would go by and then there'd be a break because it's 2 lanes and then they can turn onto Via Appia. And now they're having to because it's a single lane of traffic, it's taking them so much longer to turn onto Via Appia because of that long chain of cars. And we're hearing that at Pine, El Dorado, where you put the flasher, which is great, but it's hard now for people to turn left out of El Dorado. In fact, I've heard some people there turning right, going to the police station and flipping around or flipping around the light because it's just so hard to turn left. But Pine is where I still hear a lot of people having an issue. I'm trying to get onto the app because it takes so long now instead of groups of cars going by. So
Yes.
it's just people, I think in general, what they're complaining about is they don't like this. It is not comfortable. They would rather have had crossing measures for pedestrians to have improved. They all like the bike lane. That's not the issue. Everybody likes having the bike lane. They just want to retain the 2 lanes for comfort and relaxation of driving, plus the safety for evacuations. And now we're also getting the compounded conversation with we're going to be growing, potentially adding a lot of residential all along the McCaslin corridor. Definitely with the CU Boulder coming in. And a lot of those people are going to be coming and using Via Appia, if nothing else, to go to the rec center. And so you're going to be increasing this, like our traffic load just as we're changing our road to accommodate, a smaller number of cars, not a larger amount of cars. There's a lot of concern regarding that.
On that last point, just to follow up with that, and then we'll, is I have heard comments about potential increase in traffic because of additional housing. Remember, I think we all need to remember that this is some of these are striping decisions. Change, they're not one and done. And the housing is not going to just come nowhere. It'll be, there'll be some time. I think that's a consideration. I think it's an important consideration. I'm not sure, it may be a little bit premature to be planning around in this next group of potential improvements, striping.
All good comments. These reduced lane roads, the 4-lane roads and reduced in other areas of the metro area, they handle upwards of 12 to 15,000 cars per day, and we run at 8,000 or 9,000 cars per day now. This person currently doesn't speak to the size, street level of service, and how long you might wait certain periods of time. So I understand that concern. We think it will all operate within acceptable levels of service. We're trying to have this conversation as a case study review today, which is, roughly a year after the fact, 6 months after the fact. So we can all just work from the same page. We're not doing anything with the street till 2028. So there's still time to have conversations and think about all the good points that have been brought up and monitor and measure more. We do take every comment seriously. We try to go out there at the busiest times and capture some of these long waits. We think things are more rare around that than common, but so we have time to take all this into account.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, I think this is a really good example of a successful project. Obviously, the current my memory of the math was like the current design can handle 20,000 cars a day, maybe 22,000 cars a day, and we have 9, so has twice the capacity that we have right now. And I don't think we're planning on twice the traffic on this road, but certainly level of service will decrease if number of cars increase, and we can talk about if we need to make it a more road or car centric road again 10, 20 years from now when that build out happens. But I think it's been absolutely fantastic. I've gotten tons and tons of positive feedback. I drive this road all the time. And I think the only time I ever struggled to take a left on the Appia is just because the car in front of me is overly cautious. You sit there together for a while. And I'm like, all right, okay, that's cool. But every now and then I'll pull up and like, okay, there's 3 cars. I wonder how long this will take. And it clears really quickly. And I think what happens is you have same thing on the Castle, you have a surge of like the light turned green, a bunch of cars come through, and if you come at that moment, you're gonna have to wait a little while as that surge comes through. But the traffic in Louisville is such that like give it 30 seconds and there are no cars in sight either direction, and the turn is no problem. One thing I've noticed, and so curious as you guys go on to adjustments, minor adjustments, things to improve is I was safe, I swear to God, but I did kind of a test in which there's an acceleration lane. And so there was a car coming and I could have just sped and gone quickly and been fine. But I went really, 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 really slow. And I pulled into the acceleration lane really, really slowly and then waited for them to pass me to add into the traffic. And they just came to a complete stop. And I think, my approaching the middle of the road concerned them, what have you. And it's like, I couldn't have been going slower. I wasn't like barreling across. I was literally testing the theory of like, we should both be able to go now. We should both be able to go because there are 2 lanes. I wonder what this person will do. I had no traffic on my left, 1 car on my right, and they stopped. That's one person, one experience, one thing. But I've noticed as you come up Pine and you approach the Appia, you are on an uphill. And, you know, it's hard to see that acceleration lane if you don't know about it. And I think people feel like, I'm driving, someone's gonna sideswipe me. It's like, well, they're just taking a left on the second lane. There are actually two lanes, the thing everybody wants. There are two lanes. There are still two lanes. But people are like, ooh, it doesn't feel good. I don't know if they're gonna pull into my lane, or if they're just gonna pull in that first lane. I'm not really sure. So I don't know if there's a way to better designate the concept that one can and should take a left even with traffic coming and use that acceleration lane, or they shouldn't. It just doesn't seem to be a well utilized acceleration lane from my own very small sample. I'm just curious if there are ways to make an acceleration lane more clear for everyone.
Yeah,
If there's a way to do that.
Yeah, it's a good observation. So there's a few things that happen at the 11th hour when we did traffic engineering on the fly with the configuration of this road. One of them was at these left turn accel pockets. So those were hatched out. We added them back in quickly at the last minute. They're not an ideal configuration. I think anyone that drives it can say it's a little tight, uncomfortable, and the situation you just described is accurate. So that would definitely be an area that we reviewed when we do something in 28 to see if to make that more comfortable or see if we even want to keep it. Another thing that's popped up that we're aware of is there are some potholes starting to pop along the road. We were asked to move. Why didn't we make the bike lane as wide as we could have during the pilot project? So we made it wider, but we had to grind up all the white skip lines and then turn the asphalt. Didn't survive that well. We were aware that could be a risk. We prioritize the public sentiment of a wider bike lane to try out. So we're dealing with those issues. So yeah, those are two fatal flaws of what's out there. So we will look at those left turn acceleration lanes.
And then to be clear, would you say that it's actually in an emergency evacuation, it can handle 6 lanes in either direction?
It could, yeah. You can stack 3 wide.
So I just want to make sure, because I've heard that several times, that we don't just have a 1 lane each direction. We have 6 lanes in one direction in the case of an evacuation.
Yeah, I mean, we'd also want to like probably vet that and test that 3 wide.
Getting 3 right next to each other in the evacuation scenario is very uncomfortable. You're not gonna have enough, I would say, in a theoretical situation, you're gonna get 6 lanes there.
So that would be more like almost stop, like really slow moving, but it's super comfortable 4 lanes in one direction.
Yeah, and with that, I think what we could look at and evaluate is actual volumes of an evacuation and how quickly and what is that entire neighborhood dumps out. What is that volume doing to traffic? And it's gonna be short-lived because it's the neighborhood, it's getting out, they're going, and it's gone. If it's similar to, part of the fire where people are going back home, they're already home, they're leaving. Some people are coming in, some people are going out, right? Like you have a lot of people coming back to get things. And so we have 2 different lanes of traffic, so there's organized chaos.
Yeah, 'cause I think that communication is tough, because I know when I was evacuating, I was thinking we should go on the left side, everyone should evacuate on both sides of the road. But I didn't want to get in the way of an emergency vehicle that might be coming in. And so I was like, oh, I don't know if I want to go in the left side, right? Because I don't want to make a huge mistake and block an emergency vehicle, and no one else was on the left side. So I stayed on the right side, and I kind of, kept my sheep roll, and we all stayed on the right side of the road, and no one went into the oncoming side. So like, again, Mayor pointed out signage, not like every 10 feet, but like a sign that would help our residents in the situation. Like I've seen that sign 100,000 times in the last 5 years. There's an emergency. I know, even though it's only one sign, I've seen that sign, and I know in an emergency, absolutely use both lanes, in one direction, maybe even use the opposite direction lanes, in an emergency. And I think that signage would be incredibly valuable to our residents, giving them comfort to know that like, yeah, that's the design of this road in an emergency.
Yeah, we've had changes in the city lately, so we've lost some momentum on some things, but I think an outstanding promise we have out there for Public Works for Councilor Kern was to do a neighborhood meeting just for anybody on evacuation routes. We talked with PD. I think there's a lot of lessons learned from everybody on that day, and that evacuation will probably go significantly different just from a law enforcement perspective and how we guide traffic, it's likely, we know we need to slow traffic out both sides and to make that successful. So I think a lot of things will happen differently, and we need to make sure we're able to meet with the public to help people understand that. Other things we can do if we need to take it that far is, Paradise had evacuation issues in their fire. And now every once in a while they do an evacuation drill day, just to allow people to practice that mental, that mental muscle memory. So like, I think there's a lot still to do there to answer your question.
There's-
I want to
go-
take, just before we go further. I want to take a time check. It's 8:15 right now. We haven't taken a break. We still have, as I'm looking at the, we don't have that many slides. We have a number of issues still to go, including a photo enforcement, which perhaps the chief or been on the call Zoom address, but I would guess we can plow through, but I'd suggest we take a 5-minute break.
Can I make one comment
You can make one.
first? Thank you. Building on this whole thing about evacuations and where the routes are, we had a previous meeting where Chief Gutierrez was mentioning that it's difficult to say this is the evacuation route because you don't know what the evacuation route is going to be for this instance or that instance, or what the weather is like. Is it a fire evacuating from the enclave because the wind is blowing to the east? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe the wind is blowing toward the west and we want to go the other direction. So to say this is the evacuation route and go on both sides in this direction doesn't work for every situation.
Absolutely.
So we could have the chief at some point explain how they are planning to do evacuations in the future for different things.
I'll also say on the camera thing is you're budgeting your time. We just kind of need a nod if you want to go that route or not, and we prefer to go do research and come back with better information. We weren't looking for deep discussion tonight because we haven't given you a ton of information. It was more like high interest.
Why don't we just take 5 back at 8:20. 8:20.
I know. I think they need. We just. Just what people. Absolutely. Yeah, you have an opinion on every road you drive. I do too. So it's always just. Yeah. Have the speed cushions on the road where I live. I hate them.
See?
But I appreciate what they do.
They're there for a reason.
You get a heated spot on them. Yeah, they do their job. I mean,
That's why they're there.
right.
But it's pretty clear. We're all in these cars.
I mean,
Your
we
car,
have-
brain turn.
Yeah, it does. So that's why we try to do stuff that turns it back on,
And now I have a 17-year-old son with a driver's license in that.
How's it going?
That's a week.
Any near brushes yet?
I've heard it.
Even if there is, you may not.
I may not. The car was in one piece. Got back from town for the other.
That's good. You had experience like, where did this scratch on my bumper come from? What? We were moving and then I'm surprised. Yeah. We're good, man. I see all your slides. Smart. Yeah. Lack of.
And I'm sure. I find it right in the.
What she say, that was my favorite part of our EDI facilitator, the church parking lot, what you call it? Oh, when we were in here for the EDI thing. She's all left.
Oh, yeah, get going again. Oh, wait, me, oh, you're right. Hey, I'm here. All right, so continue on a little bit on the discussion here of the Appy and some of the pedestrian improvements. So it's kind of that next step. First thing we did last year was that one lane striping with some of the pockets. So you can see this existing image on the top is depicting, this is the intersection with Highland as an example of what this looks like today. So if you were to look at the crosswalk here, this east leg is 113 feet long, and it's tight inside of this intersection. There's no pedestrian island or refuge, and both pedestrians here have a starting point that is the same. So it's a little bit hard maybe for a driver to understand which direction the person may be wanting to enter and cross. One of the things that ADA ramps are going is it's a little bit more directional to help shorten that distance. So this bottom example here is what this road could look like when we do some pedestrian ADA ramp improvements. You'll notice that throughout our paving and resurfacing program in the last several years, we're starting to go more into the directional ramps when we replace these ramps in order to help provide them better and shorter crossing for our most vulnerable users. Our ADA people like to get really direct square lines across. And it really shortens things up. So for an example here, at Tyler, if we were to remove this existing area that you can just see in the shadows up here, which is where the old acceleration is. One thing I want to, we're talking in our language, we're using acceleration lane. There's two different acceleration lanes that we've kind of thrown out. We may want to work on some terminology. But you have the historical acceleration lane here at Tyler. And it also worked at Church Lane, just coming out there's that you take your right, come into a point, you can join. Well, we strike that off, we closed it, it's no longer there. The other acceleration lane that we were just talking a little bit about is that receiving lane. That's at Pine. I believe the other one was down at the rec center. So maybe one's a staging lane, but for now, when I'm talking about when I'm saying acceleration lanes are these. And taking that acceleration lane out, making this a nice directional ramp actually shrinks that down from 113 feet to 90 feet. A lot less time for everyone to get across. We could build this little median island nose, very similar to what happened on South Boulder Road, where pedestrians can make one decision. And in this case, with one lane, they're just looking for the one traffic car coming through to make a decision point to get to this point. Then they're going to cross. Going northbound, they got to get through this one lane here, the turn lane, and then turn. We do recommend, we've heard from the community that these right turn lanes are a value. It feels like we should probably put those back in. We don't necessarily disagree. Having them gone, having them in, it doesn't really make a huge difference in safety. It certainly would create a even shorter crossing by about 10 feet. Not sure that there's a ton of value there. So that kind of covers on site B2.
One question about the post.
Yep.
So if you go, I guess southbound, just go to the top of the post.
Yep.
So what I imagine is gonna happen, I'm taking a right turn, I come up, I stop.
Yep.
Now I have to inch out because I can't see traffic from that far back, right? So the intention is for me to come to a stop, there's no pedestrian, now pull up to kind of where I used to pull up. Right, and the other one, check traffic and then go, and that's a normal behavior. You expect people not to just kind of roll through that crosswalk necessarily. Like,
The behavior, if you look at a lot of these directional ramps, we might not have that stop bar marked, but you have the stop sign. That stop sign is going to be behind that crossing point. Technically, where you're supposed to stop, people will be making that choice to roll through.
but when no pedestrians present.
When no pedestrians present. But the way you right per traffic law, go stop, make sure there's no pedestrians, then roll on, make sure you to your decision.
Okay.
But you know, with the directional ramps that they're definitely crossing right there, if they're there.
No, I love that
Are they
difference.
going left or are they going right?
I hadn't thought about that where they're coming out from the street in the same spot. You're right. It's like, wait, oh, they're going that way. And you don't know until they really make it into the street.
And another thing to add too is on this proposed, we've thrown these little, we call cat tracks, which kind of guide your left turn movements into that safe pocket. It doesn't mean there's no car coming the other direction, but it helps to guide where you're going, especially on those little bit of visibility, those long pine, right, where you don't, it's hard to see where you enter. And so those are a potential, and it could also be a short term. That's something that we could make that improvement now. Another thing that came up with these, and we've had discussions out of the Hawks or the RFPs, well, mentioned earlier, we wouldn't recommend a Hawk because it creates a different type of feature. We've already got 4 RFPs. If we were to put an RFP in here, it's a possibility to improve the pedestrian call. But what we want to do is probably close one side crosswalk so that there's only one crossing. So we wouldn't maybe, in this case, we choose the even shorter crossing at west leg. All things to consider. I mean, there's no obviously decisions that have been made.
Councilmember Fern.
Thank you. I really like these suggestions, guys. This is great, especially I think to accommodate a lot of be more handicapped accessible. One of my questions was, if you're proposing the change that you were just talking about, like where you have to take the curb and remove the acceleration lane from Tyler onto Via Appia, does that also mean that this road, because we were just discussing this, that we may have future needs? There's still a lot of residential concern about this being a 1-lane road. I think a lot of people, especially in Ward 2, would really like this to go back to being 2 lanes in each direction. And is that going to make it impossible for it to have a bike lane and 2 lanes through if we change that physically for this crossing.
There will be some areas along the corridor where we have to commit and make a decision on what the final configuration looks like. So we're trying to respond to, I think there was a council meeting just after the fatality accident where the council asked us to dive in and look what could be done next and through the budget process. I think we had $100,000 for design this year and 500, 600 next year to do something. And so we're showing you like what we could do. And yeah, some of these things that we could do would make that more permanent. So that's why we're here kind of early on without decisions on top of you to discuss it and see where everybody's leaning.
I really like this suggestion actually that you just made, where you would only have that one crossing at Via Appia on the shorter one, so you can see the one it's that one there. I don't think there's anything wrong with saying to pedestrians and bicyclists that you who are going to use a crosswalk that you need to cross and then cross there, that you're not necessarily going to have all of the crossings if you want to have this improved safety. And I think it sets an expectation for cars. It might make it easier. Are we looking at other options? Like this is for Tyler and Via Appia. Are you doing this for Pine? And then what about at Lafayette? Something similar?
Yes, yep, so this is a case example here that we chose to kind of share that would be applied to very similarly at both of those that you mentioned.
Do you guys see any downsides to the just one crosswalk at each one of these major intersections anyway? I mean, these are big 4-way intersections across Via Appia. Do you see any downside to us having just one instead of 2 crossing at Via Appia, but you still obviously have the crosswalks at the cross streets?
I mean, yeah, I think, again, you might have to do 3 crossings. So if I'm on, if you can point it to the lower right corner. Yep, up a little bit. If I'm there and I want to cross Via Appia, I have to cross 1, 2, 3 to get where I was going. So it's 3 crossings instead of 1 crossing if my intention is to cross that road and keep going. And so it's just an example of, well, never mind, I'm just going to cross the crosswalk, because why would I cross 3 roads to get to the 1 crossing I want?
So just to interject on that one, on this exact case, it's not all the way through, so there is no sidewalk.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So in this particular case,
They have to walk.
they're gonna be generally on this side anyway. But that's
Interesting.
not to
Okay.
say that's not necessarily the case of Lafayette or
Okay.
So that's just kind of lucky that this was shown,
Got it.
but yeah, that's a point for, so that time.
But again, it's still start in the upper right corner.
Same, yeah,
Yeah, so if you start in the upper right corner,
Yep.
then I have, no, up right. Now I have to cross 1, 2, 3 to get where I wanted to go. Right, if I happen to be up there. So I'm just like, and I think what would happen for me is I wouldn't do that.
Yep.
I would just cross the road instead of crossing 3 times. And so then you got people not crossing the crosswalk because we didn't put a crosswalk there, and you made it difficult for a pedestrian. And we asked them to do more work. That I'm not saying that would happen for everyone. That would be the downside.
Yeah, I mean, we can, as we move, I think we're getting a feel for what people like or not. And as we move through this, Councilor Kern, to your question, we can, if you're like, yeah, we want to do improvements, then we could provide those improvements in like incremental steps. You can see where stuff would be totally permanent and stuff could be optional, and then the council can, decide where to invest. We have designed this out, but to keep brevity in the conversation, we just had this one location as an example.
one thing to add is when we have if I think Curdy mentioned that the funding and the improvements for the design this year and then implementation next year. That would imply if we do, for example, these directional ramps would be additional grinding the asphalt and then more new striping, and so conversation around timing may want to just be re-engaged a little bit just to figure out if it's worth grinding more asphalt, more patching, more scars on the road. Or wait till the app gets paved or discuss the app get paved second stand as well. I mean, it's just a piece to consider for.
Councilmember Cooper.
Yeah, one little clarification, are the dash guiding lines, is the idea that it would, where there is one of those, acceleration lanes, that it would guide you into the pocket, or would it just guide you into the traveler?
We'd want to evaluate that and see if, first of all, if those pockets remain,
Yeah,
what's going to be the best solution for that. Not everybody wants to get into that. If it's just clear, you're gonna kind of cross over. So it may not be something that you want to put that cat track and the pocket. We just want to look at those. See if there's any fatal flaws, any complications.
Some of the directional ramps and the pedestrian refuges also start to conflict with that left turn pocket, so we might need to prioritize one or the other in a location.
So I'm wondering when the funding is scheduled to take place for repaving of the Appia? And is that when restriping or reconfiguration is gonna happen? So it's not gonna be something that we do now and then repave the road and have to do it again?
Yeah, so great question. So currently, in the last forecasted models that we've run leading into this paving season, the API was showing this 2028. Obviously, we've just started the road, we're seeing more patches. But there's other priorities in the paving cycle that need to be flushed out. We have obviously some alternatives that we're gonna be bringing to y'all in a couple of weeks in March. To flush out a little bit of what that looks like. But right now it's showing about 2020.
So none of these changes are gonna happen before 2020.
Just to be clear, we have 100,000 to do something this year. It was designed, but these guys are good enough to do it in-house. That could go towards infrastructure. Then we have, I think it's 500,000 or 600,000 next year, 26, to do something, which could be these things. And then we have funding for full repay in 28. These were council direction under budget to do something sooner than later, and then push other things, bigger costs out to even out the capital improvement budget. So what Jeff's saying is we can align all that and do it all at once, or if people are feeling like these are absolutely needed now, we can do that. It just comes with a little bit of additional pain. I will say, Via Appia, relatively speaking, is a safe road. We have shortened a lot of crossing, and by metric, these are very safe crossings. We understand we had an incident. So, I mean, if I'm using your money wisely, I don't feel a rush to do anything. And we can wait and align things. But if you all feel more importance than what we're saying, we can do something sooner, or we can do something on the approved schedule.
just wanted to probe a little bit more on an issue that Councilor Kern brought up. So the intersection with Lafayette that has that added complication of being on a bend and then it's lower to the north, so that complicates the views basically. People coming to that intersection. So, I mean, if we did something similar to the proposed at Lafayette, do you think that would address all those issues? Is there something else we could do there? Do you think those concerns are overblown?
No, I think no concerns ever overblown, but I think what we would look at there would also say visibility triangles, saying that Lafayette section is in that 30-mile-an-hour zone.
Yeah.
And so we would look for what those are, how that visibility is coming around that bend, take into consideration some of the elevation. It's been a hot minute since I've experienced Lafayette. I think right now we have the striping only on the one side of the striping, but you can kind of go on your point, you can cross anywhere, but it's marked at one location side. It's to try to encourage. That would be, we would look at all different scenarios. To try to
Just on the sequencing piece, are there pieces that sort of fit in better for 28, where it wouldn't cause rework or inefficient work, and pieces that fit worse, like what's the, if we wanted to do something short term, which piece fits best?
Really, any concrete is best to go first, right? You know, you don't wanna have to redo any asphalt, that you wanna get a good clean finish and good clean stripe at the end of the day. But to do the concrete and then do some of the markings, goes and brings that little extra layer of that grinding. It's hard, it would be hard to make some of these improvements. You couldn't do just a median aisle refuge because you gotta get the ramps where they wanna be. So there are some maybe pavement treatments we can do that would take the cost a little bit more than the basic. You could probably get a slurry type seal in there, maybe just do the intersection. Take it up a little bit after we grind it up.
The grinding's not the end of the world. Yeah, we're just telling you it's gonna create some potholes and you'll get some emails. Doesn't mean we had no clue what we were up to. It just means, hey, we've got some interim condition that we'll patch as it pops, and then in 28 there'll be a brand new road. So
How, I mean, I guess I'm trying to get a sense, like, what's the order of magnitude?
Pretty minor. We think about, we always do concrete right before any of our resurfacing projects, and there's always a little bit of a gap between those. This is a longer term gap and no inefficiency. Yeah, we're gonna grind off striping a second. So that the crosswalk bars here that exist here would get ground off to be placed here. And then when we mill out in a few years, but that's really, really cheap compared to the whole project.
Got it. So the sequencing thing is not a big deal.
no, you shouldn't be thinking about that part. We probably overcomplicated it by even saying.
It's like 28 isn't that far out.
No,
One other question, and this is just kind of visual. Dreams. Is there any way that you can straighten the road? Get rid of those curves?
yeah, I mean,
Out of the box. Out of the box.
yeah, unlimited budget conversations are always fun.
That's under.
Oh, gee. It can be one big part of it. Yeah. So, yeah, I
Sorry
think
to
we can take all this into account. These guys are really good at, and girls, about drafting things up and revising what we may have done to add what you've said today. What we're hearing is you want to continue down this path. Possibly preserving the ability to, in the 10 or 20-year framework, if you need more lanes, you can review that. So very little disposable concrete. Don't want to mess with evacuations. I think that's the gist, is what I'm hearing.
I think, Catherine or Karen, did you have?
Thanks. I was just gonna add, yeah, I was gonna have one more thing with the right, since you're on the improvements on the right turn lanes. You had mentioned a year ago, Kurt, that you had said if, not in the first striping, but like in different phases, you would consider or find a way to maybe allow people to do a right turn into the rec center, so that people could go around them. Is there any plan for that yet? Or does that have to be part of what happens in 28 with the final plan?
I mean, that's one we could do in the interim and that. Yeah, I mean, that adds some
Visual, that's never had a right turn.
right, we'll have to look at how it affects the sidewalks. Is it doable? Yes. Do we need to do some design work? Yes. It could be done in the interim for a right turn into the rec center. And then also just emphasize what Jeff said at church and the right turn lanes, we'll bring them back.
Sure.
And-
So church, Tyler Pine and Church had the right turns.
Right.
And then what Councilmember Dickinson was talking about with the I think you guys called them a staging lane, and instead of an acceleration lane, it's like left turn, like when you're turning left onto Via Appia from any of the streets, whether that's the rec center or Pine or whatever, Tyler. I agree with him. They don't, the way that they're set up, and my understanding, Kurt, you say was like the medians they come farther out than if you were to actually make them a real staging lane, and that would be big changes long term. But yeah, the way that they are now, I would say that they're kind of not usable. I've had actually the same experience, but coming out of the rec center, when I go to use that staging lane, and somebody literally stops thinking that I'm going to like pull in front of them or try to hit them because they don't really feel like that's a lane or they're too close to it. So right now, I don't think that they're being effective. And then, but I would really impress again, and I appreciate Councilmember Cooper bringing it up too. Lafayette Street is such a huge concern for people, as well as where we have the Beacon crossing just past that, like in the curviness. That's where we like saw the a couple of different rear end accidents. If we can come up and like focus on those two more so than like everything on Via Appia, that's really where a lot of the concern comes from. So for people who say, please do more, that's where I hear it. And then from a lot of the voices of, please give us back our 2 lanes, they're more than happy to take a lot more on down there where it should be 25 and nobody does it, or 30 and nobody does it. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, I mean, I like what you said, staging lane is good terminology versus acceleration lane. I think we're apt to take the staging lanes out. Like we said, that was kind of 11th hour ad that it's not, nobody has said, wow, that staging lane's amazing. I think the feedback we're getting is it was a great try, but it doesn't quite hit a home run or any hit. So we would have to do significant things on the median. So probably in the short term, we would maybe want to phase those out if people were feeling that. And then we hear you at Lafayette and the Coyote Run crossing, explore those areas. We are running into some limitations because by metrics and by crossing shortages, that's very safe as it is. The next steps to try to make that safer through the countermeasures we've described are through like raised crosswalks or bump outs. The challenge is there, bump outs impact evacuation, lane availability, and then raised crosswalks impact fire and police first response, and VAP is critical first response corridor. So those tools are out of our toolbox right now. So we are kind of hitting a limitation in those locations. Did I miss anything? No.
I mean, Lafayette doesn't have flashing. There's no flashing light at Lafayette or anything like that.
So look at maybe just an RFB in addition to.
Maybe, I don't know.
Is there flashing at Cody Run?
There is.
And there's flashing right to the west as well.
Yeah.
At Sagebrush.
So, yeah, I'd say, yeah.
There's 2 intersections next to it. Stuff.
So what we'll add a little bit is with the RFBs, you do actually see statistically an increase in rear ends. That's primarily due to the lights go on, someone gets that brake, they have to stop for them. Versus like making sure that they're gonna, you know, hey, I can go through that, the next person knows, right? Instead of doing an unsafe maneuver. So that is a kind of a weird trade-off now. I think you use the term major rear end, I don't, that looks like, but that those are challenges, you know, that I've witnessed at Sagebrush prior to the fatality, 2 lanes, someone coming up on the other lane having to zip around to the rear. They popped up on the sidewalk, ran over the ramp, so thankfully they weren't waiting. So those are the challenges that we face.
Statistically, an RFB improves compliance by 40% for cars without one, but it increases rear ends by 10%. So 10%, when you only have 1 rear end every 3 years, is like 1 more rear end. I'm not saying a rear end's a good thing. The fact that we've slowed down the road, we've kind of mitigated that risk. So if we look at all the calculated risk, it's probably.
One more question and then.
Yeah, I think this is more of an overarching comment is, you know, I remember when the fatality happened, and there's lots of what can we do to make this intersection safer? For obvious reasons, someone just died, right? And it's like, but this is one of our safest intersections in town. It's on a straightaway, it's in a 30 to 35 mile an hour speed. It's got a crosswalk, it's got a signal. Like, if you want to spend money to prevent the next death, there are way more dangerous crossings than this one. Right? And so I feel like what I'm hearing from you is the app is actually pretty safe. If you guys want to spend $100,000 making an intersection safer, we've got some other intersections that are in more dire need of that $100,000. And this one's gonna be repaved in 2028 anyway. So you might wanna wait till 2028 to make these improvements and use that money on not such a contentious road, but on a more important moment in crossing somewhere else in our town. So I just wanted to throw that out there that, hey, with these improvements coming over time as is most efficient and necessary, and us prioritizing our limited dollars on the most dangerous crossing in Louisville. And I doubt it's on this road. I don't know where it is, but I doubt it's on this road. So that's just one thing I want to throw out.
Kurt, do you have, or you guys have what you need from us on this?
I think we do for this iteration, yes.
Why don't we move to the next?
Of course.
So this brings us to, it's probably one of our last slides, photo enforcement. So a lot of communities are starting to bring this up. There's two different types of photo enforcement. This is just gonna be a quick education. So you've got traffic signals, red light improvements or red light monitoring, and you have your speed and traffic enforcement there. So pros, you're gonna see an improved safety because it's deterring speeding once it's known, you know, especially the mobile units, and the chief can probably chime in if he's still on, let's look at he is. So those mobile units can be either purchased and owned by the agency, but they're also third parties, which gets into a whole other level of conversation. It's consistent, it's unbiased, you're speeding, it pulls over, it doesn't matter what color car you're driving or anything like that. So efficient use allows staff and resources for PD to put their officers in other capacities. The evidence is objective and encourages that compliance. Cons, residency privacy concerns. There is a pretty strong negative public perception that comes with these. There are still some ongoing legal challenges, just to make sure that those get explored. And initial startup costs can be pretty high, but there's probably a pro that goes up there that there's value to that. And then there's context violation. So if you're at a signal and you're running a red light, because it's an emergency vehicle, you have nowhere else to go, and you're jumping out in the intersection, so a lot of that vehicle will go through. Flash, you got a ticket. It's hard to go through some of that. I think again, you know, running a red light to avoid an accident. So that's kind of the long and short of it. There's a few things that we'd have to look at within our signals for consistent timing and yellows, and we've done that with our timing in the last few years. Currently, we're in a good shape for our signals to allow proper braking speed. But that's kind of just the
Is Chief is still on. I wonder if he's got anything to throw in.
Oh, yeah, thank you, Mayor. Just a quick comment. Great presentation. Kudos to Kurt and his team. This slide really is in here for just to educate council as to some options that are certainly available. Several communities within Colorado are moving to photo enforcement. The state of Colorado is also considering putting this type of technology along highway systems. The biggest thing with this is if there is an interest in a system like this or this type of enforcement within our community, we can certainly do the homework and the research to ensure that we have the processes in place to make sure that it's done correctly. There would be some coordination, collaboration with traffic engineers, also with the municipal court and the municipal judge, because anybody who receives these citations is still afforded due process and has a right to appeal the citation. So there are several different nuances to photo enforcement. The state did recently expand back in 2023 the areas where this technology can be placed. That would involve some traffic studies, collection of data, and looking back for a period of 5 years to determine where they're most appropriate and where they can actually be placed within the community. So there's a lot to be considered with this. And like I mentioned, this was really just to put it before you so that you can have some discussion. If you do have questions about this specifically, I can do my best to answer those. But really just want to indicate to council that this is one potential option.
Chief, one question that I would have is, if we were to consider this, some point here, where would you say are the one or two most obvious, best places in town to?
You know, it's a little bit difficult to answer only because we would have to look specifically at the data. A lot of what we do in terms of our enforcement is looking at recent data over the last year or several months. So we would have to look to see, going back 5 years where we're seeing higher rates of speed and things like that. If we determine to go forward with like either the speed enforcement or if we would include the red light enforcement, I think it really would take us evaluating the data to ensure that we're putting it in the right position.
Thanks. Councilmember Hamilton.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I think Chief might have answered my question in his response to you, but I want to double check that I'm understanding correctly. Because in teeing up this slide, what I heard was quite a bit of focus on intersections, but this in theory could be installed, say, on like Pine Street heading east as well. It doesn't have to be exclusively at intersections. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. The provisions in the state law allow for communities to put them within school zones, residential neighborhoods, construction zones, or areas that we have designated as corridors. I guess they call them automatic vehicle ID corridors, which means that based on traffic data and studies, we could put them within those areas as long as we have the data to support that there are violations occurring there. So they can be placed, outside of intersections and within those areas that I just mentioned.
Okay. I mean, I think the last thing I'll say on this topic is, given the limited amount of resources that we have to do enforcement of this sort in person, that's my understanding. I would be interested in learning more about this and exploring it further in the future, this technology.
It's like a photo finish here. I'll go for junior from Ward 1.
So maybe to follow up on Councilor Hamilton's last thoughts. This is directed at the chief. Do you have a sense for, say we went forward with this, would it be more or less work for your department? Do you feel like this is something that the department would like to have or not like to have? Just kind of ignoring us for the moment. How do you think it would impact what your department does?
I think from an enforcement perspective, it would obviously enhance our ability to monitor roadways for speed and for potentially red light violations. It does answer the question of can we put a police officer there, throughout the day and throughout the night when in fact resources don't allow us to do that, but it would give some level of enforcement there. To be honest with you, I don't have a preference one way or the other. I think that there have been the pros and the cons have been cited. From a resource allocation, it is a good resource. It's something that would require some additional people or processes to manage the citations and the processing of those citations. But I know that as this technology progresses, a lot of the companies have that type of service built into the framework of the services that they offer. So it would really be a matter of looking at what potentially could be contracted out and going that route. But from a resource perspective, sure, it does allow for some additional enforcement resources.
I'll add to, if the PD does this and they can contract out processing of the tickets, it does increase the court side of things. So I know Morrison put in a traffic camera, thousands of tickets, literally thousands of tickets were issued. That does increase the impact on the court. Just again, that's what we would deal with if that's what you want to do. But
our citizens are gonna be. Less. That don't
They don't
think-
speed.
there should- Of course, it's
Right.
other people who are not from Louisville.
They're the one.
I guess. Mayor Pro Tem.
I would say that, you know, when I lived in Rwanda, they had what they call Sophia everywhere. And it's just basically a speed camera. And if you sped, you got a ticket. It was pretty simple, like they were everywhere. And if you sped, you got a ticket. And you just knew that. And so I never sped, ever. Because any time you sped, you got a ticket. It was really simple. It's a third world country. And they had technology everywhere to say, if you speed, you get a ticket. And so like, I cannot believe that we are forcing human beings to try to figure out who is speeding when at individual moments and when their resources allow it. And otherwise, you can just speed whenever you want, wherever you want, and get away with it. Like it's a very, very silly thing. And I never felt like my privacy was ever taken because they didn't even know who the driver was. They're just like, yeah, this license plate has a ticket. And this license plate has to pay that ticket. Who owns this car? Okay, you have to pay. So whether it's my daughter, my wife, myself, we just have to pay the ticket. So I'm 98% in favor of a resource that encourages people to slow down and raises money for the city to cover the cost of the enforcement of the issue, right? Not for our own benefit, but covers the cost of the increased court issues that we have.
There's really the negative public perception that goes along with that. Not, I mean, it is.
Oh, people hate getting tickets.
Yeah, well, they do, especially with that.
Something tells me you get better due process here. than you might have gotten.
Oh, yeah, they would actually pull you over and you'd pay on site.
That's sad.
That you
I
text them.
agree with Councilmember Hamilton's comments. And also the mayor pro tem. I don't see why we wouldn't. I have a preference for the speeding cameras and less of a preference toward the red light cameras. I think because of some of the reasons highlighted here, I think intersections are a little bit of a different situation and certainly encouraging people to try and sort of blast through and beat the camera for, I want to think more about at least. But the case for the speeding cameras, at least again sitting here right now, seems quite clear. And when I, in conversations with folks about some of the common traffic improvements, a common refrain, no matter who you're talking to, is, well, why don't you just do more traffic enforcement? Louisville PD out there doing more enforcement. It's hard for me to understand that we don't have so many officers that we can have one on every street at every hour of the day. We don't have hear that number. This is a way to sort of get some of that benefit out the associated cost. I don't see much of a downside.
Councilmember Curran.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree. I think I'm definitely not in favor of the red light traffic cams. I think that the pros just outweigh the cons with that, and I think the court load will be huge. There'll be so many reasons to like for them to be justifying, especially to like for a resident to justify whether they had to, push a yellow because they're on their way to a hospital or something. I mean, there's just like so many reasons, but the speeding piece of it, we're talking about strategically placing them in areas of high concern, of high speeding concern. I too have seen the speeding cameras used in other parts of this country as well as in other countries I've traveled to. And it isn't just that there's a camera and it's hidden. There's a huge sign in advance of that. So it's a reminder to tell you, oh, it's 35 miles an hour here. You need to be doing 35. There's a camera ahead, a speed camera ahead. So people who aren't doing that, maybe they've, drifted listening to a song or something and they're speeding, they'll slow down before they hit the camera. And it's just an additional reminder. They get the warning. Then you've got the radar ahead. I'd be in favor of exploring that. But I just really think that the red light cameras are a mistake for this community. I think the speeding cameras can be useful in certain locations, though.
I've agreed with, I don't think I've And I agree with what I'm saying about encouraging.
Next slide.
Right, yeah. So in conclusion, we are working here in the engineering group and with our partners over at PD. We're striving to get to that vision zero through that safe system approach. We are being proactive in eliminating deaths on serious accidents. And FHWA's resources, programs support those safety goals. We utilize those. We're actively improving safety and comfort for all users throughout the city, throughout the different corridors, including Old Valley and Apia. And I think together we will create safer roads for all. That kind of wraps our head around everything that we've been covering.
So is there anything we didn't hit on that you wish we would?
This is, I have one, which is, how do you and the chief work together on these issues? How does that happen? I presume it happens, but.
Absolutely. Listen, I'm gonna start off by saying Raphael has been amazing to work with. He's proactive with his staff out there, I think, on enforcement, where I don't know if before we were as proactive. And I think he's interdepartmental. Him and his team are great partners with engineering. They talk about areas where we get calls, where they have hot spots, like, and so it's the best partnership I've ever seen since I've been here. Sorry, 14 years.
Yeah, we work together to get accident history, accident data to pull those. We're currently working with not just the chief, but also our IT group to get a little bit better database where we can pull things a little bit more instantly. So that's some behind the scenes stuff that we're working on to try to get that data a little bit quicker, a little bit less resources, maybe and asking from key records. We're working, chief and I will, when we pull some traffic counts in certain areas, we'll evaluate, we'll look at things. But might be seeing a little bit of a trend here, like some targeted enforcement. Probably had some success in that in a couple locations past year or so. It's hard to I think.
The last piece on expectations, I think the question you asked around the process on the two big projects, restriping projects, and it's not just that. We can think about that if there's anything to add. I take your point, and I think the rest of us do too, that maybe we have to think about what stuff we just put in your lap and what stuff we need to have some public input on, stuff. Know that it's necessary, and that's a question I'm sure that other council members will hear from them.
So one comment for the seven of us, which is, and I think I mentioned this when we were doing annual reviews, which is at some point I'd like for us to do a study session with our prosecutor and talk about the traffic code, and deals she makes with people and why and so on, and just get a better working understanding of how the penalty side works. And the thing I always think of in that context is you don't have to go back all that long in history to a time where a lot of people died in driving accidents, right? Driving was quite common and wasn't punished very harshly, or wasn't punished as harshly as it is now. It was culturally acceptable in a way that it isn't anymore. And there's lots of things that people do in cars, like texting and browsing the internet and doing whatever it is they do on their cell phones, that I think present similar issues and certainly have resulted in deaths here and elsewhere. And just sort of thinking through, do we have the traffic code we want for our options?
Also, I suspect that there are some model traffic code issues that might be good for a study session. Yeah. Yeah.
I was just wondering if Raphael could very briefly explain what he had mentioned at a meeting previously about the evacuation process and how the roads would need to be configured in order to do that most efficient.
Yeah, I can briefly speak to that. So there's there's an application that we're using right now that's through ODM. It's a Genesis Protect, and it has some ability and capabilities to do some modeling of evacuations of neighborhoods or specific areas. So we're using some of that data to kind of get a general sense or idea of what an evacuation would look like for different parts of the community. The software takes into consideration population density. You can filter by hour of day, day of the week, things like that. And so we're using some of that modeling to kind of give us an idea of what it would take during a situation to be able to clear or evacuate a part of the community. So when we use that and we do some of these tabletop reenactments, we try to predict or I guess define where the emergency is coming from. And when we look at evacuation routes, the best thing to do is try to push as many people into arterials or higher volume roadways as possible rather than, narrow or restricted roadways and things like that. As it relates to Via Appia, we have no concerns right now because the width of the road has not changed. We can certainly use every bit of real estate that we need to in order to move people one direction or another. One of the things that we don't want to necessarily lock ourselves into is having a singular evacuation. So if everybody is learned to always go east on Via Appia, but if the emergency is at South Boulder Road and Via Appia, then that creates an issue because now we have to turn people around. And so what we recommend is having people really do an assessment on their own to determine, like, give me 2 or 3 or more ways that I can get out of my neighborhood. And if an emergency came from, you know, whatever direction, if an emergency comes from the north, how do I get out of my neighborhood to a main roadway, a main highway to get out of the danger zone, or vice versa if it's coming from the south. So a lot of that is going to be unique to where people are living. But really, we recommend that everybody looks at having a couple of different avenues of evacuation. And again, in an emergency situation, we want to remind people that, you're not going to be held liable for violating a traffic law. You're not going to be held liable for driving across a park if that's your only way to get out of your neighborhood. Those things are public safety exceptions, and it's written into state law that you have the ability to do that, especially if your life is in jeopardy or there's a large scale emergency. So, when we look at evacuation, let's say from, let's say Monarch High School, we have multiple potential ways that we would push people from that area depending on where the emergency was occurring. So it's just a constant assessment, knowing the community, and then knowing how we can get people to the larger roadways that will get them out of the area as quickly and efficiently as possible.
Thanks, Chief. Is there anything else?
Just want to do a quick recap of what I think I heard to make sure we didn't miss anything and all that. Is that all right?
Councilman.
Yeah.
But
Could you go back one slide? So I guess it's a question, like, so as I understand, you can become like a Vision Zero community. And I don't know what that formally entails, but like, I think Boulder is one. I don't know, have we thought about that?
We did. So so Vision Zero is just a goal approach that you can do the Vision Zero study. We felt like we did a lot of that work with the transportation master plan and a lot of the work we've done through the mapping that Jeff just said with PD. So Vision Zero study is just understanding where your accidents are, and then what type of accidents, and then what improvements you would do to mitigate that, like the no right turn on red at South Boulder. So we feel like we know what we need to do. We can also cherry pick from some plans that have been done around how to communicate that. Or if people feel like we need to be a vision zero community, then we would do a study to say we did the study. So about $50,000, I believe. I mean, at the time that we were working through budgets, we felt like that wasn't a good use of your money for the information.
Then could you go back to the slide with the early on with the proposed raised crosswalks? Yeah. Yeah, I was wondering, have you thought about the crossing on Main Street right in front of the middle school?
At Griffith, basically.
Yeah, basically at the intersection with Griffith.
No.
I think
But
that
now
was.
I am.
Oh, it's another fire station.
Oh, that might be the reason.
The fire station, and it's a busy intersection, there's a lot going on.
I mean, it's
Yeah,
just up from it, so maybe that's the problem.
yeah. I mean, it doesn't mean we can't try to revisit it. We always take your input and run the route.
And have you thought about behind the middle school on Jefferson? I've had people complain about speeding on Jefferson. It's like at Jefferson and Griffith.
So the question will be, are we trying to slow people down, or are we just trying to have a safer crosswalk? Because one
Yeah.
side we decided that we thought about putting one there because people think people are going too
Right.
fast. Different
I don't know.
problems.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What I would challenge with a lot of these too is most of this is started with some level of discussion. Or you have a traffic calming application that the community can apply for. So kind of going back to Madison and Juniper, we had a resident there that really spearheaded close to 50 signatures on that. And so we did, at that point, we'll take out those speed to look at some investigation to see if it's a perception of speeding or if it is speeding. And we'll also monitor the crossing behaviors of some of the students and people that are crossing locations. See if there's an opportunity to make that. So the reason we want those applications is it helps to kind of flush out the one person that thinks there's one issue, they gotta go talk to their neighbors, and a lot of times they'll find, hey, I want speed bumps, well, they hate them. And nobody else wants them, I'm sure, but so that kind of puts the onus a little bit on the community to see if there's what's the solution, but that'll bring the problem to our. That's specific. With that said, we want to try to avoid getting one every time there's a complaint, because it's a lot of effort, staff time.
Something about traffic calming I don't think we said today is it does move around. And I mentioned early in the presentation that we try to focus these things at like regional trails or in a school zone. Those or if there's some like definitely a direct route to a school that's just outside of the school zone, because families do move around. Like new parents over here are gonna want a lot of traffic calming, and then as their kids grow up, they don't want it. But the new parents over here, now they want the traffic. I want what they got. So like we do. That is why we have a petition process and we try to keep it focused. Because, you know, eventually we'll end up with it everywhere if we just work off of where a family thinks it's needed. But we can add these locations just into our scans, see if there's anywhere obvious things that we missed. Yeah.
Can I get a motion to adjourn?
That's one question.
Thanks, Chris.
What was the name of the award that you guys got for VIAP in Polk Valley?
We received the American Public Works Association Mountain Region Award for the year for the restriping projects that we did with. They had, that's the name that we got.
Congratulations.
Won an award.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Nay.
Member Hamilton, were you gonna say aye too?
Sure. Aye.
I have a question.
Thanks.
Thanks for your time.
Thanks, folks.